and welcome to the opening drive. Brooke Grimsley here, and stepping in today for Randy Carricker. You know by now that if Randy is out, usually he's golfing, and also Brandon Kiley will be in today. BK, thank you for joining us again this morning.
It's great to be back in. How you guys doing on a beautiful Monday morning here in St. Louis?
I'm doing great now that I can actually see the sun coming out. It was very dark this morning when I left to come here to the studio.
Get ready.
I know.
We're officially here.
I know. It's that time of year where the weather's unpredictable. It's cold in the morning, and then it heats up during the rest of the day. And also, it's really dark when you're out in the morning. It makes it harder to get up when it's like that.
It's tough. I got up this morning. I don't have many issues. Mondays are fine. If I had to do this all week, it would be a little bit more difficult. But for one day, I can make it work. This morning, I was laying in bed, and I was like, I don't know. Feeling pretty comfy in here. I feel all right. It's a little chilly outside. It's a great morning to just kind of chill. And here we are.
We are here this morning. There's a lot to go over, and we have a jam-packed show for you today. We'll talk to Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues, because the Blues will finally start their season tomorrow. We'll get into what he noticed from the preseason. And, of course, we have to talk about everything with college football. What a weird and wacky and wild college football weekend it was. And, of course, things started with 9th-ranked at the time, Mizzou, falling to 25th-ranked Texas A&M on the road, 41-10, the final score in that one. And it's really hard to point to what was the most disappointing aspect of that loss, BK. I think I might start with the defense, because they went into that game third in the country in total defense, and defensively, they really didn't have an answer for Texas A&M.
It'd be easier for me to tell you what was, like, up to par for Missouri than it was what was disappointing to me. I don't think a single player had a good game. Not one. There was nobody on the team that I could look back on and be like, yeah, that guy played well. You could say Luther because he had that big play that was called back, but there were some other moments over the course of the game where body language, not great from him. Theo Weiss was fine, I suppose. Other than that, though, like, they had no running game to speak of. Brady Cook was not good. There's no way for me to cape for him today. I've, generally speaking, defended him. I think he gets unjust criticism from Mizzou fans for what he's been in his time. I can't defend that performance on Saturday. It was terrible. He was not good in this one. The defense, though, you're right, was the worst piece of it all. Texas A&M ran up and down the field all day long against you. It was an embarrassing performance by Missouri. There's no other way to put it. They went out there and got their ass handed to them against a pretty good Texas A&M team. They're not as good as you made them look on Saturday. That was embarrassing.
It was really embarrassing. And you're right. If you're talking about one aspect of the game that you actually thought Mizzou did well in, it's really hard to figure out. Now, with Brady Cook, a lot of people are going to be talking about Brady Cook all week long, because that was discussion even going into this weekend, right? We had Eli Drinkwitz, I'm sure you heard, on the show during their bye week, defending Brady Cook, saying, you're absolutely crazy, basically, if you think that we should not have Brady Cook be our quarterback. And he did not look good in that game. Now, I will point out something, though, BK, because the offensive line, I think, is something that we have to look at for Mizzou, because Brady Cook was pressured 45% of his dropbacks in that Texas A&M game, and Tiger left tackle Marcus Bryant, he struggled big time, giving up a season-high 5 pressures and committing 2 false start penalties. I think that Mizzou is really missing their former left tackle, Javon Foster.
Yeah, they are, but, I mean, anybody going up against Texas A&M this year is going to deal with pressure. That's how Texas A&M is built. They've got a couple of NFL defensive ends, and they're really good. They're incredibly athletic. Yes, Missouri misses their left tackle. They miss their left guard. No doubt about it. You got to be able to overcome that. If you're the quarterback that can take your team to the college football playoff, you make plays. You go out there and you make plays. And so far this year, Brady Cook has not done that. Looked into what he's done on deep passing so far this season. This is something that early on last year didn't have a whole lot of it. And then it took off. Brady Cook was able to start connecting down the field. This year hasn't happened yet. There are 66 quarterbacks in college football that have attempted at least 20 deep balls on the season, 20 deep passes so far this year. Brady Cook is tied for 61st of those 66 quarterbacks in deep passing completions. He has 6 of them on the year. And that's just unacceptable. You're not getting any kind of explosive passing plays from Brady Cook. Some of that, sure, you can blame the offensive line for it. Eventually, you got to make a play. And Brady Cook's not making plays. He complete 13 of 31 passes.
He was sacked 6 times.
Some of that's on him.
Yeah,
some of that's on him. You got to be able to see the defense. You got to be able to find where your hot reads are, and he didn't do that on Saturday. He hasn't done it all year. I thought eventually it would get turned around for him. It hasn't. It's getting worse instead of getting better.
Yeah, it really is not great right now. And you also mentioned, too, something that I thought was really important, Luther Burden. Now, we could talk about the refs in this game, but I really don't feel like that's the actual story of the game. I know that's something. It was in the first quarter, but they didn't punch back. I think that's the other half of the story is, yes, that was not great to see, especially early on in the game when you're talking about that initial flag that was thrown with TIOLI. I think we can all say that that was a defensive pass interference, of course, and it was not a great call, but at the same time, you have to be able to respond in that one. And I just thought it was really shocking to me, Luther Burden's body language during the course of the game, especially when they had some of those calls not work out for him. You look over the sidelines, Luther Burden has a towel on his head. The game's not completely over with yet, but there is one of the leaders of your teams, and that is how he is responding on the sidelines. What message does that send to the rest of his teammates?
It's not good, and I'll tell you who's watching that is NFL scouts. Like, that's the thing for him that I think is super disappointing is you've got to be able to respond better than that. Earlier this year, you had the moment where he kind of lost his mind, the personal foul call. He should have been ejected from the game a couple of weeks ago. He ends up being able to stay in because they basically say, hey, are we really going to do this right now? We're going to throw out Luther Burden in this game. They decided not to. They probably should have. By the letter of the law, he should have been thrown out in that one. In this one, you've got him kind of sulking on the sidelines. He's got the towel over his head. You can tell he's kind of pouting out there a little bit. Luther Burden's a really good player, and he's become a leader on this football team, and you can't respond like that in that moment. You get a little bit of adversity. We've seen this before. Man, you don't have to go back far. It's the exact same type of situation last year. You're at Kentucky on the road. You need the fake punt to be able to convert that, and you're down by 14 at the time. They convert that fake punt. They end up coming back, and the season is able to happen the way that it did because of that game. In this one, you're down 10-0 after the first quarter, and they were dead in the water. You knew watching that game, if you're a Missouri fan, you knew after the first quarter you had no chance of coming back. Yes, some of that's the penalties, but a lot of it is you watched your team and you knew they have no fight. They have no ability to be able to come back in this one. No running game, nothing coming from the quarterback position. Your receivers couldn't go out there and make plays and respond to the adversity that they saw in the first quarter. There was a bunch of nothing, and this is now becoming a trend for Mizzou in road games. They were 3-11 in road games in the first 3 seasons under Eli Drinkwitz. Last year, they reversed the trend. They go 3-1 in road games, but one of those wins was against Kentucky when I mentioned they were down 14-0 early on in that one, so they didn't show up until they had already been punched in the mouth. This was one of those types of performances. They didn't have the response this time around. They end up losing. It's something worth monitoring for the rest of the way. I don't think it's going to come back to bite them against UMass. I think they'll be able to pick this one up. They'll be fine there.
I hope so.
UMass is terrible, but on the road at Alabama, on the road at Mississippi State, on the road at South Carolina, I don't know. This is something worth monitoring if you're a Mizzou fan.
And if you're looking to point the finger at somebody, head coach Eli Drinkwitz said, look no further than him.
Yeah, just a really poor performance by my football team, and it starts with me, and I apologize to our fans. It's my responsibility for us to be better, and, that the start of the first half, not being able to convert third downs, not being able to stop them on third down, ultimately the difference in the game.
And he's right. When you're talking about the road record, that's on him. They had a bye week. They had 2 weeks to prepare for this. That's on Eli Drinkwitz for not having his group ready to go. And I know that they had a different quarterback in there than expected, than Reed. I actually thought that would be a positive for Mizzou in a lot of different ways because Reed was actually doing a pretty great job taking over that role for Connor Wigman. But Wigman looked fantastic in that game. It's almost like defensively they were not prepared for him. Do you think last year, and this is something that you brought up via text, BK, last night, that something to prove mantra that we saw with Mizzou last year, I felt like they really embodied it. It was something that they really embraced. And it felt like going into this season, maybe that's something they haven't fully carried over. Or what do you think that it is?
I can't tell exactly what's happened here. I don't know. Like, sometimes we try to explain things through things that make sense for us on the outside, right? It's entirely possible Missouri's just not that good this year. I don't know why or how that happened, but maybe it's some of the offensive line issues, the turnover there that you were mentioning earlier, Brooke. Some of it is just natural regression. Guys progress is not linear. They don't just always get better. Some guys get a lot better, and then they kind of plateau, and then maybe even come back to earth as NFL or college football defenses are able to adjust to them. I can't explain it entirely, but some of it does feel like this is a team that read all their press clippings during the offseason and said, yeah, we're really good, and you should go ahead and respect us before they earned that respect with this specific group. Last year's team earned the respect that they were given. They went out there and proved it on the football field time and time and time again. This year's been the opposite. If you've watched these games, especially the last 3 games that they've played against Vanderbilt, Boston College, and Texas A&M, it does not resemble a top 25 team. They have that ranking next to them because of what they came into the season with in terms of the expectations. The actual on-field product so far this year has not resembled a top 25 team in the country, and that's ultimately where you get your respect. You earn it based on what you have done on the football field in that season. They have not done that so far this year. Brooke, I want to flip the page on you. You asked us a question over the weekend, and Rocc, I want to get your thoughts because I know you're a Mizzou guy as well. That game on Saturday was the worst loss for Mizzou since blank. What would you fill in the blank with? The worst loss for Mizzou, given expectations, given what you had coming in, worst loss for Mizzou since blank.
Because of expectations, it's 2013.
Wow.
It goes all the way back to that.
The South Carolina game?
No, I'm going all the way to the SEC championship game.
Wow.
Because we're talking about.
I didn't feel like that was a bad loss, though. At least I knew Auburn was amazing.
Here's the thing, though. The helplessness.
Yeah.
The feeling of helplessness.
Down defensive line against them.
The
Trey
feeling
Mason
of helplessness.
running for 300 yards.
And I also now have a little bit of hindsight of looking Trey Mason in the eyes when he was a Rams player and him telling me we ran 3 plays and we ran them 60 times and you guys couldn't stop them. And as much as respect and love I have for Dave Steckel, it is marred by that game. And so because of the expectations, which is we're talking about the times that Mizzou, you win games, you put yourself in the national conversation. And that was another one that, on Saturday, and they completely failed. And it was the hopelessness of this is not going to get fixed. And we do not know what we're doing out here. We are getting out coached actively, and I'm watching it happen on the screen in front of me. And when you combine the expectations, for me, I go all the way back to 2013.
I think K-State back in 2022, and I know that you mentioned that too. I think a lot of people did as well because they were ranked at that time. I think they were 8th in the nation, and K-State was ranked 18th. They were in the top 25, both of them.
Mizzou,
and that
I don't think Mizzou was ranked in that point.
Were they ranked in that one?
No, not in that one.
I might have been thinking of a different year. Maybe 2023 was what I was thinking of, but at least Mizzou won that one. But in
K-State
2022,
was ranked really high in that one.
Yeah, in 2022, K-State, I think that's a good one. And some people also pointed to Tennessee, that one being another one as well. But I think expectations-wise, and that's why I asked the question, I understand that going into it, Texas A&M was actually a favorite because they had home field advantage. But expectation-wise, Mizzou ranked so high, Texas A&M ranked just 25th in the nation. I think that had a lot to do with it. When was the worst loss you think?
I would go with Wyoming. Wyoming on the road to open up the season because there's something that sucks the life out of you about losing your opener to a team that you just have no belief is going to beat you. Like, there's nothing worse than that because the entire season is set off the rails. There was some excitement going into that year for Mizzou fans. You had Larry Roundtree coming back. You had Albert O coming back. You had Kelly Bryant in his first year as a starter. You lost Drew Lock, and then they get Kelly Bryant via the transfer portal, a guy that had a ton of success as a starter at Clemson. So you come into the season, you're like, okay, 2018 was a pretty good year, not quite as good as expectations were for that team. But you have some good players coming back. You start out the season on the road at Wyoming, just a baffling scheduling decision. You should never go up there to play on the road, especially as an opener for the year. They lose that game. That team ended up being pretty good after that. And then another one that I would throw in here as like one of the most devastating losses for Mizzou in recent years at Vanderbilt. So they lose to Wyoming. They then win their next 5 games. They go to Vanderbilt and just are lifeless from the moment that the ball is kicked, and then the rest of the way they sucked. They were just a terrible team down the stretch. I don't know what happened to that team. There's a lot of rumors flying around about what specifically took place with them, but they lost all hope the rest of the way, were completely lifeless. Those 2 losses that year were really frustrating to watch.
Yeah, I was at the Vanderbilt game, and
2019?
That is the singular worst football game I've seen Mizzou play since they became a respectable football program again, in Gary Pinkel's 3rd or 4th year. I mean, it was a pathetic football game, and so maybe that just completely jades everything I think about expectations going into 2019. But Kelly Bryant was going to be a big thing, and you weren't a terrible. 2018 they went 8-5, but just expectation. I never thought that the 2019 Missouri Tigers were going to go to the SEC championship.
No, but I thought they could go 9-3.
Yeah,
I had real hopes for them to be a good team. Yeah. It wasn't quite to the same degree. That's what makes this year so weird.
It is.
It feels kind of more similar to a 2008 loss.
It's the hope that kills you.
Yeah.
It is. I remember Kelly Bryant, just the expectations going in is that you thought, man, this guy's coming from Clemson and he's going to go help Mizzou.
Right.
You thought there would be so much more
There was a
coming from
lot of
that team.
similarities to this game and 2008 losing against Oklahoma State at home. That's probably the closest comparison in terms of expectations coming in. You're coming off of a great season. You've got a lot of returning starters. And then you lose a game that you weren't supposed to lose. And it's like, wait, what? And then the next week, they followed that up with a just horrible loss against Texas.
In pure deflating losses that just make no sense. There's also Roy Halou going for 300 against you the week after you beat number 1 Oklahoma. That one is always going to stick in my craw as well. It's just so long ago, but man, that one was bad.
That was such a trap game.
Yeah.
At home, number 1 Oklahoma. You've got the game day experience, everything about that, and then you go on the road against a good Nebraska team. It's just yikes.
And Mizzou dropped to number 21 in
Should've been
the
out of
AP
the top
Top 25. Oh, we'll have to touch back on that one. And we will throughout the show with Mizzou. Also this weekend, in case you missed it, I don't know how you would have missed this, but Vanderbilt beat number 1 ranked Alabama this weekend in Nashville. We'll also get into that today during the course of the show. And Arkansas also beat Tennessee. So a lot of heartbreaks going around across the SEC. Or if you don't like those teams, I don't think you'd say it was a heartbreak. You were probably pretty excited. Coming up next, we have the 3 things that we love from the weekend. That's ahead here on the opening drive. Brooke, BK, and Rocc here, and it is time for 3 things that we loved from this weekend. BK, why don't you kick us off with number
3.
I like how you did that so that way I didn't have to potentially mess up. That was great. I loved that.
I know. I'm learning. We've only done this like 5-6 times where you filled in the mornings now.
Yeah.
And
I was talking
now
to
I'm remembering.
my wife the other day, and I was like, I think I've done more Monday shows in the morning than I have on my show over the last couple of months. So I'll miss not doing these things with you. All right. Number 3 for me. We were talking about this off air, Brooke. So we can stick with yours. I'm going to get to the baseball game from last night and really just this series in general. I don't think there's anything better than an intra-division rivalry that takes center stage once we get to the postseason. You remember back, it obviously didn't go the Cardinals' way, but when the Cubs and the Cardinals were both really good, this is like 2015, 2016, and you got to see them in the playoffs against one another. Or you look back at like Dodgers, Giants back in the day, or Yankees, Red Sox back in the day. Those historical rivalries that geographically have a lot of meaning to the two respective teams. And then you see them go up against each other head-to-head in a postseason series. There's truly nothing better. The theater that we got last night from Padres versus Dodgers, that's as good as you're going to get in a postseason series. So my number 3 thing for the sports weekend, Dodgers Padres is living up to all of the hype. It's my favorite baseball series that we've got in the divisional series round. I'm loving this.
Yeah, I think that also all press is good press, and it's not great what the Dodgers fans were doing, but a lot of people are going to be talking about it today, right? Nationally, a lot of people will be talking about it, and that's something that we focus on a lot of times is how do you engage more audiences, especially during the NFL season where that is king. That is what's always going to captivate people the most. How do you get attention there? It's dramatics. It's things like that. And so my number 3 thing from this weekend is specifically last night in that game, Jurickson Profar with an ultimate troll job. He was robbing Mookie Betts of a home run, and Mookie was nearly to third base by the time that Profar actually acknowledged that he actually caught the ball, and he was kind of toying with the fans a little bit, which might have led the fans to rebel a little bit towards the end of the game that we saw there. But here was Jurickson in his in-game interview about it with Ken Rosenthal.
Thanks, Joe. Jurickson, how did you make that catch?
That was all. That was one of my wishes, all the time. I want to rob a homer, and, I did it in a playoff game, so it was awesome.
I absolutely love that. But when we're talking about just how captivating it is and how much fun it is to watch this, it is living up to the expectations. And Jurickson Profar with that troll job, I just thought he's an absolute menace for doing that, because I at first was fooled, and so were the graphics team. They had the home run ready to go for Mookie Betts, and Mookie, he looked excited, and then he kind of stopped a little bit and was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Great troll job by Profar.
It was fantastic. You can tell this is a team that's going to step up in the postseason. Speaking of the Padres, they've just got guys that live in the moment. Tatis, Profar, Machado, Jackson Merrill has just continued what has been a spectacular rookie season for him as well. They've got a bunch of dudes that are just excited by the moment, not fearful of it. And I think they're going to win this series. I think they're the better team. I think the Dodgers have serious pitching questions the rest of the way. They really needed to get the first 2 games of this series because they don't have a lot of starters to go in game 3, 4, 5. You don't feel good about any of those. I like the Padres. I think they're a better team. Dodgers are going to have to get more out of the top of their lineup. Last night, you look at it, Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman. We'll see what happens with Freeman with that ankle issue now. 0-10 combined between those 3 players. If those guys don't get going offensively, they're not going to be able to win this series. So.
Yeah, Cardinals fans know if your stars don't show up, things do not work out well for you.
All right, my number 2.
Number 2.
Jaden Daniels is putting together a legitimate MVP campaign. Rocc, I've got a little bit of audio right here, a highlight for you coming off of this weekend. Daniels is one of my favorite players to watch this week, and he did not disappoint yesterday.
On 4th down, free runner, Owusu Koromoa missed him, and Daniels has the first down and more. Down the sideline, it's 1st and goal.
No NFL player has ever had 1,000 passing yards and 250 or more rushing yards in their first 5 career games in the NFL until Jaden Daniels has done that this season. First 5 games, 1,000 passing yards, 250 rushing yards. He's one of the most entertaining players already in the NFL. I thought yesterday was going to be the day that we saw come back to earth a bit. I bet on the Browns. I liked them to be able to win this game. They're a terrible football team, but it just felt like a bad spot.
Whoa. You bet on the Browns?
I did indeed. It felt like a bad spot. You've got the Washington Commanders who have been riding really high. You've got the Browns who have a great pass rush. It felt like a really good spot to be able to bet against them. And instead, Jaden Daniels just shoved it down my throat. The guy is amazing. He's already a top 5 to 7 quarterback in the NFL. And if you're just going by pure entertainment, dude might be the most entertaining quarterback in the league to watch right now. He's an MVP frontrunner at this point in the season.
He's elusive. He's exciting. It's everything that you were hoping to see from him, because if you saw him, of course, Mizzou fans know, during his LSU playing days, you were wondering if that would translate over to the NFL, and the Commanders have really set up things for him to have the success that we're seeing this season. So number 2 for me will be City SC closing out their season with a win. I know that it's not the season that anybody was hoping. You missed the postseason, but at the same time, they were able to at least close out things at home with a 3-0 shutout of the Houston Dynamo FC. And I think that there is a light at the end of the tunnel here, because when you look at the new additions that City SC has brought in, Simon, Bescher, and Toyshirt, and Hartel, I think that it really shows you that things are going in the right direction, especially with those new additions. And I'm looking forward to next season.
Number 1.
Number 1.
Number 1 for me is not going to be something that I saw on like the football field over the weekend or the baseball diamond. I was able to run yesterday in a half marathon out in St. Charles, the Mo Cowbell, for any of you that ended up doing. There was 5,000 people that were a part of this out in the St. Charles area. Any of you that did the marathon, God bless you. I did 1. That's enough for me. I don't need to do that anymore. I did the half marathon. Finished with the time that was my best since COVID started. The best part about it, though, was getting to the finish line and seeing my son. There is nothing like that experience of doing something that means a lot to you, but being able to do it with your kids involved. Brooke, it's the first time I've been able to really have that as a part of it. My son was at the last one, but he's now getting to the age where he kind of understands what's going on around him a little bit more. Nothing quite like it. So my number 1 thing from the weekend was being able to do that and seeing my son as I crossed the finish line. Nothing beats that.
That is so sweet. The dad power helped push you through.
That's right.
And help you get that great time. So number 1 for me is, as we talked about in the last segment, there was a lot of upsets in college football this weekend, but my favorite was definitely Vanderbilt somehow beating number 1 ranked Alabama. You know what? I shouldn't even say somehow, because Vanderbilt did exactly what they needed to do in that game. They had an answer at every single turn for Alabama. And my favorite part of this was at the end. And by the way, this is the first time in program history that Vanderbilt has beat an AP number 1 ranked team, even a top 5 team. They have not even done that in their program's history.
60.
Yes. And
previously.
At the end of the game, the fans stormed the field and they tore down the goalposts. BK, I don't know if you know what Vanderbilt is known for, but this is like a great medical school, very smart, kind of like the butt of the joke of the SEC, because they don't really push you go there to play the SEC. They say SEC and you get the degree. That is how recruiting works for Vanderbilt football, because it's really hard to get kids in there. The GPA requirements are really high. I didn't think they had it in them to be able to tear down that goalpost. They carried it out of the stadium, took it down Broadway, and chucked it into the Cumberland River. So congratulations to Vanderbilt for doing that and for having an incredible celebration.
Diego Pavia, one of my favorite players in college football to watch. I said when they were going up against Missouri, I think I said it on this show, watch out for him. He is somebody that can absolutely pull off this kind of an upset because he's so freaking talented. He can do it with his legs. He can do it with his arm. In this game, a nearly flawless performance by Diego Pavia against that Alabama defense. Now, Alabama's also got some warts. This was not just about Vanderbilt.
No.
It was also about what Alabama was incapable of doing defensively, but credit to them, man. What an unbelievable win. It was the first time that a number 1 team has lost by 3 touchdowns, or as a 3 touchdown favorite, since 2008 when USC lost to Oregon State. So it's been more than 15 years since a team in Alabama spot lost a game like this.
Quiz Rogers? Like, I'm trying to think about who was on Oregon State for that win. Look, I got to say, you did not go to college with a lot of engineering students, did you?
No.
Okay, because that's the least surprising thing I've ever seen happen in my entire life.
Quiz Rogers.
Was it really? Oh my God!
Rogers.
Engineering students are monsters when it's 2:00 in the morning.
This is like more of a medical. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of engineering students, but I'm just saying, trust me, when you're that close to Nashville, The only thing I'm surprised about was the inefficiency, which they tore it out of the ground. They had to cut it, and they left a lot of field goal posts in the turf. And then, you rookies. Mizzou had the goalposts down at Harpo's and a circular saw out to cut pieces of the goalpost up, that now there are hundreds of Mizzou students spread across America who I'm sure still have their piece of the goalpost when they took down #1 Oklahoma in 2010. What are you doing throwing it in the river? That is history, you fools.
Well, I'm sure
get a saw and let's go to work and let's make some history.
They walked to like 3 miles.
Yeah, they walked 3 miles.
Stop
Did you see them?
Get cutting.
Did you see them running down Broadway with it? Also, do I need to, restate here that this really hasn't happened to Vandy ever before, so they're learning, and also having a student section is even shocking to see. I saw that there were some Alabama fans actually walking down Broadway with them. Shame
I
on
would
you.
have done it too.
Really?
You kidding me? Absolutely.
That's
I
embarrassing.
understand that your team just lost, but am I supposed to be miserable the rest of the night? No, I went to Nashville for a reason. I'm going to Broadway.
Yeah, I'm going to Broadway one way or the other. I could either pay $20 for an Uber or just march in a little impromptu parade. I mean,
you know what you're going to remember for the rest of your life? Doing that.
Yes.
You at least get the memory of it. You walk down with your, 30,000 closest friends now from Vanderbilt. You go to Broadway. You drink together the rest of the night. You wash away your sorrows.
Think about this. You can now throw your arm around your son in 30 years at Bryant-Denny Stadium as you look at the scoreboard and you're crushing Vanderbilt 52-0 and say, son, I was there one time when they were good at football. I mean, that's a beautiful memory.
3-touchdown favorite. We lost. It was miserable. I watched them as they took the goalposts down to Broadway. I was there for that.
And now look at us.
Yes.
Now look at us.
And the good news, if you were
Plucky old
concerned,
Alabama. Now we're beating the underdog in Vanderbilt.
the firemen did fish it out of the Cumberland River, so maybe it did go back to the fans. Yeah, there is a bright side there. Well, that was the 3 things that we loved from this weekend. Coming up, you heard BK talking about Jaden Daniels and what he's been able to do. Is there anyone in the NFL that you can trust right now? We'll discuss that coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
This is Rocc with your Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Well, it was a bad weekend for the Missouri Tigers as they get slaughtered 41-10 down at Texas A&M. Texas A&M going into the game was number 25, and they beat up on number 9 ranked Missouri. But it wasn't a great day for a number of other ranked teams. As number 4, Tennessee goes down 19-14 against Tennessee, and of course the big one, Alabama, falls to Vanderbilt 40-35. There are also some losses in the Big Ten as Washington took down number 10 Michigan, and Minnesota takes down number 11 USC. In the NFL, you can catch Monday Night Football right here on 101 ESPN. It's Chiefs Saints. Pregame starts at 6:30. And later on today in the show, the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber, joins BK and Brooke as they talk it over with the Blues season starting tomorrow. Blues and Kraken. And again, you'll be able to hear that right here on your home for the St. Louis Blues, 101 ESPN and 101ESPN.com. That is your Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Welcome back to the opening drive. Brooke and BK here in for Randy Carricker. And the NFL is really weird this season. We were talking about that during the break. It's a really wacky, weird season. We know the passing is down, but this weekend actually showcased a lot of different changes that we've seen with some NFL offenses. But is there an NFL team right now that you can trust? Now, BK, I think the answer for me typically would be the Vikings. And look, they're 5-0. What am I complaining about? There really isn't anything to complain about, especially if you watch that game against the Jets this weekend, because defensively they look fantastic. My first thought, honestly, was that a Devontae Adams, should he ask to just get traded to the Vikings so he could actually catch some passes from Aaron Rodgers? That was one of my first thoughts this weekend, because defensively the Vikings look great, but there were some cracks offensively. Darnold was just 14 of 31 for 179 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. It wasn't his best game that we've seen. Is there a team, though, that you can trust right now in the NFL?
Should be the Vikings, because you look at it and it's like, okay, they have wins on the season against San Francisco, Houston, Green Bay, and the Jets. Those are 4 quality wins that they have. Like, if we were doing the college football resume thing that we'll do by the end of the season, they have an excellent resume on the season. And yet, no, I don't trust them. Like, offensively, you saw what it can look like. Sam Darnold is having a really solid season. It's still Sam Darnold, and when we get to postseason time, am I really going to trust Sam Darnold to make big plays against the 49ers, against the Lions, against some of the better teams in the NFC? My answer is probably going to be no once we get there. So I think they're a good team. I think they're going to make the postseason. I think they're a hell of a lot better than anybody was expecting them to be going into the season, unless you're a Vikings fan. And if so, hey, man, kudos. I didn't see this coming at all. But I don't trust them. I don't trust a single team in the league right now. I don't think we have any teams that are trustworthy. And what I mean by that is, you know what you're going to get out of them every single week. You know they've got a good defense, good offense. They're going to be well coached, all of that. And the reason why, Brooke, and this shows up in the results, so far through 5 weeks, we have 2 undefeated teams and only 3 one-loss teams. That's 5 teams total so far this year that have 1 or 0 losses through the first 5 weeks. The last time we had that few 1-loss or 0-loss teams at this point in the season was 2017. Now, let's go ahead and look back at what happened to the 2017 season. What was the end of that year? NFC and AFC championship games that season. Eagles versus the Vikings. Nick Foles versus, at that point in time, Case Keenum as the Minnesota Vikings quarterback. And on the other side of things, it was the Jaguars versus the Patriots with Blake Bortles going up against Tom Brady in the AFC championship game. Weird season. Ended with a whole lot of stupidity, and then suddenly Nick Foles is the Super Bowl champion that season. That's what this year is. There's just not a lot of great teams across the NFL, and the teams that are good, you can't trust them, and we're going to get to January. It's going to be like, hold on. The Vikings are here. The Falcons in year 1 with Kirk Cousins are here. You've got like the Steelers that suddenly made it to the AFC championship game. It's going to be a weird year. I don't trust any of these teams right now.
Do you think it is going to come down to what we saw last year with the Chiefs, where it just has to be a team that can have a really good defense that holds you together until you get to the end there, and maybe you can bring together something offensively?
I think it's going to be an elite unit. I don't know which side that's going to be. Like, the Commanders have an elite offense right now. I don't know how far that's going to be able to take them. It's really hard to succeed with a rookie quarterback. We saw this last year, right? CJ Stroud was as good as I've seen by a rookie quarterback. He gets into the postseason, goes up against that Ravens defense. It's like, just hasn't seen this yet. He's not ready for this quite yet. And so could that happen to Jaden Daniels? It absolutely could. But I think you need one elite unit on either side. Most years, I think you need a top 10 offense and defense. You got to be in the top 10 on both areas. I don't think this is one of those seasons. If you're top 5 on offense or defense, you're going to have a shot.
What about a team that you're completely out on already? Now, I know a lot of people will look at maybe the Bengals just because of their record, and they're in a hole right now. They're 1-4. But if you watch that game, Joe Burrow was not the reason that they lost that game. Once again, you're pointing to things defensively for them. But is there a team that you're saying, all right, I've already seen enough this early in the season,
yeah,
and
like
I'm already
the cross-off
out?
teams, right? We can go through and we can be like, hey, they're not making the playoffs. No chance. Let's go through this real quick. Dolphins, I'm ready to write them off. Are you guys there with me?
Yes.
I'm done. I don't
Even
need
if
to see it
Tua
anymore.
returns?
Don't care. They stink. That team's really bad. The Patriots, cross them off.
No.
I'm good. I don't think there's anybody in the AFC North that I'm ready to cross off yet. I know the you know what?
I have Browns.
Take 2.
Take 2.
After my bet over the weekend, I would like to restate that. I've got the Browns as the team that I will cross off.
Quarterback walked off the field instead of going for it on 4th down when the coach wanted to.
Hey, there was 12
good
men
call.
out there. There was 12 men out there.
Good call. Yeah, I'm ready to cross off the Browns. I'm sorry, Brooke, but in the AFC South, it's basically everybody other than the Texans. The Colts defense stinks. The Titans don't have a quarterback. I'm sorry, but
They
it's
don't
just
have an
true.
offensive
You know
line,
it as
too.
well.
Yes.
Sure, we can give them all the excuses in the world. Their quarterback is terrible. And the Jaguars are the worst coach team in the NFL so far this year.
Hey, can I say, at least
No,
this weekend,
no, stop.
I did see some quarterbacks make some plays where I was like, hey, at least it wasn't Will Levis this weekend that was doing
Yeah,
that.
give it about a week.
I had
Next
those
Sunday
moments.
against the Colts, you'll see one of those.
Can I give you another one? What about the Jets? Aaron
cross them off?
Rodgers did not look great this weekend.
Sure, but you're done with them to the point where you don't think they can make the playoffs?
Do you think even
I'm
if
done
they
with them as a
added
contender.
Devontae Adams, that would change things for them?
I guess it depends. Like, what are we talking about here? Change things in terms of getting. I think they could get to 10 wins.
You think so?
Do I think they can win a Super Bowl? No, and that was the aspiration for them this season. So they fallen short of expectations. But I mean, look around the AFC right now. Can they get to 10 wins? Yeah, they've got a game against Pittsburgh, New England, Arizona, Indianapolis, Seattle, Miami, Jacksonville, the Rams. That's 8 games remaining. They've got 2 wins. Yeah, they could get to 10 easy.
What about the Browns? Should they
they're
bench Deshaun Watson? Jameson Winston season. Come on.
It doesn't matter because they have to pay him $50 million a year for like the next 3 seasons. So should they? Yes, he's the worst player in the NFL right now, regardless of position. But will they? No, I'd be pretty surprised.
They said that they're not going to bench him, too. They said
I think
that.
it's an ownership decision. I think the owner is saying, hey, I'm not paying $50 million for this guy to not play football for us.
Yeah. What about the Chiefs? I'm surprised that that's a team that you're not going with, that maybe that you're bought in. You're not trusting what you're seeing with them.
Have you, Brooke, you've watched this
I
team.
know. But I'm just saying, as a Chiefs fan, you still aren't high on what they've been able to do?
They've won 4 games by a score. No. Absolutely. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they lose tonight.
Yeah.
They have no receivers remaining. They're down their best running back. Like, no. Their defense isn't quite as good as it was a year ago. They're a good team. They'll probably win the Super Bowl this year. But do I trust them? No, absolutely not.
It just always, they find a way. I think that's the thing that is always surprising. And as wacky as things are in the NFL this year, it wouldn't be that surprising. I think another team that we haven't touched on yet, but the Lions, is that a team that you could actually see contending?
Well, I see a lot of these teams. Somebody's got to contend. I'm saying, like, on an every Sunday basis, you go into the game, you're like, I know exactly what I'm getting today. Last year, I felt like I knew what I was getting with the Chiefs.
49ers seemed automatic.
Absolutely. Like, there would be games where I would go in and you wouldn't get it out of them. But most of the time, you could go, hell, even the Lions last year, they're going to score a ton of points offensively. They're going to give up more defensively than what you'd like to see. They're going to be super aggressive on 4th down. I knew exactly who they were as a football team. And we knew that from day one when they beat the Chiefs in Kansas City on that opening night of the season. I don't really have that with very many teams this year, especially like if we're talking about the Commanders maybe could be that team, but do you guys trust a rookie quarterback to be that already? I don't know. I clearly don't because I bet on the Browns this week and I couldn't have been more wrong.
Well, even the Bills too. That was a team that I was pretty high on, especially with Josh
I bet
Allen.
on them
what he was
yesterday
able to
too.
do.
That didn't go well.
So basically we're saying here that if you bet on a team, maybe we should go the opposite way.
I had been really good to start out the season, and this week I went 0-3. So.
Oh no. Well, that's what happens. All right, that is there anyone that you could trust in the NFL right now? Coming up next, we have Take It or Leave It. So get your text into the Air Comfort Service text line. That is 314-399-9646, 314-399. Yo-ho! Take It or Leave It is coming up next.
take it. If you don't, send it right back.
Get your text into 314-399-9646 and give us your take it or leave it.
Brought to you by Gloria Lou Realty. Visit GloriaHasTheBuyers.com and start packing.
That's my final offer. Take it or leave it.
Welcome back to the opening drive. It is time for Take It or Leave It. So get your text into the Air Comfort Service text line. That is 314-399-9646, 314-399-YO-HO. Eventually, we'll get BK to do it. At least one of these Mondays. I'm like holding out hope for it.
Yeah. And we're going to get Dan to do it on beat one time, too.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going with 0% on both of them, and I'll take bets from anyone else who wants them.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with you on that one. All right, so take it or leave it, guys. Eli Drinkwitz planted the blanket for TIOLI Jr. this weekend.
Take it.
And it would have been a good one if they hadn't performed the way that
I do want to hear the audio. So here is Texas A&M's head coach, Elko, saying, hey, why don't you go ask Drinkwitz about the blanket?
And have you gathered any intel on the blanket and the card for Weiss early? And how did you feel like he responded?
My suggestion would be you guys should go ask Eli where that came from, because I have a strong feeling that came from the other side and had nothing to do with Texas A&M, Will Lee, or anybody over here. So you should point that one on the other side.
Yeah. How do you guys feel about that? Of course, if it worked out well, then we would be saying that's an incredible tactic to do by Eli Drinkwitz. But the fact that you lost 41-10, it stings a lot more.
Yeah, it's a very Eli Drinkwitz thing to do. This is a super lame thing to say for radio. I don't really care about it. It doesn't really do much for me. I wasn't super into the storyline and over the weekend going into the game. I know a lot of people, especially the broadcast, really latched onto that thing.
Well, he walked into the stadium with the blanket, too.
Yeah, he certainly played it up as well. I get it. It's what makes sports great, right? It's the theater of it all, and they're playing into it. I didn't have an issue with it from either side. If they had actually sent it to him, I think it's hilarious. Like, it's just a funny thing to do. It didn't really do much for me, though. It didn't make me super excited or like fearful or anything. I just didn't do much for me.
Did it make you think differently of like maybe Eli Drinkwitz's approach to it?
This is a guy that went to the podium with the Darth Vader mask in a lightsaber. No, it didn't. It changed nothing because we know who Eli Drinkwitz is. He does this stuff.
He has toned down a little bit over the years, though.
A little bit. He's still got that in him, though. He still certainly has that in him.
Still got to roll up to a recruiting visit in a 18-wheeler.
Exactly. and like that's what makes him him, right? As long as you win these games, nobody's going to care about any of that.
This is why college football, like people were like, this is why I like college football because it's different than the NFL. This is part of it. This is part of the stew. This is the reason why it's so fun is because you get coaches that are a little bit off the beaten path and that would never work in the NFL. You know who never would have worked in the NFL? Mike Leach. God bless him for being on this earth for us as college football fans for a decade and a half.
Yeah, like Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin didn't work in the NFL. It's not something that there's a lot of these guys that are at the collegiate level that their quirks do not transfer over to a different level. But in college, it can work for you. All right. Take it or leave it, guys. We'll have at least 3 more top 10 upsets this upcoming weekend in college football. So some of them to be aware of. Texas is playing against Oklahoma in that classic shootout game. Texas is a 14-point favorite in that one. Penn State versus USC going on the road, traveling multiple time zones, something that has been really difficult for teams in the Big Ten so far this year. Penn State is a 5.5-point road favorite in that one. Ohio State is traveling to Oregon, another one where they're going multiple time zones across the country. Ohio State is a 4-point favorite in that one. And then Ole Miss as well is on the road this week, also a top 10 team at LSU. Bunch of teams that are on the road that are all favored on the road, 2.5-point favorite for Ole Miss. So take it or leave it, at least 3 of the top 10 teams in the country once again this weekend will fall in upsets this weekend.
I will take it just because I want the pandemonium of this, right?
I like it.
It feels like with college football, especially with what happened this week, I don't know what to expect anymore from any of these teams. Also, I think it shows that rankings really don't matter and really don't showcase who is the best in the country, especially when you're looking at the top 10, so I'll take it.
Take it or leave it. Mizzou fan always bets the over on season wins, and they always lose. Tell that to my bank account last year.
No, because
and my bank account
fans
this year
are fatalist by nature.
Because the under's going to cover this year, and I'm going to win. I'm going to win the over last year, and I'm going to win the under this year. So thank you.
Well, I wouldn't have done that.
10.5. It was risky.
Oh, 10.5.
It was 10.5.
It was
9.5 last year. It was
10.5
10.5 this year.
Or
8.5 last year.
I would say no, because Mizzou fans, I mean, just go to any message board. Mizzou fans are super pessimistic. They come about it honestly, but this was the rare season in which Mizzou fans actually had hope for their team. So I'm going to leave it, because most of the time Mizzou fans see their team as being worse than most of you do that aren't Mizzou fans. Mizzou fans are like Cardinals fans. They hate their team until somebody else picks on them, and then they hate that person for picking on their team.
Very defensive.
You're damn right. Take it or leave it. The Ravens should have fired Harbaugh and promoted McDonald instead of letting him go to Seattle.
Leave that.
Leave it. Harbaugh's still a top 5 coach in the NFL.
Is that a real one? Is that like a real...
Like, is he below or higher than his brother?
Ooh, man. If you're looking for longevity, I'll take John. If you're looking for somebody that's just going to win for you right now, Jim's about as good as you can get in the NFL.
Take it or leave it. Derrick Henry is the puzzle piece that the Ravens were missing.
Apparently. I'll take that. I mean, it's working out so far. Now, defensively,
I was about to say, leave it, because their
still a
defense is what's gonna get
missing
them
puzzle piece there. But Derrick Henry has looked great. It looks like he's loving life with Lamar Jackson. I'm not jealous at all.
He's been excellent for them. I don't think he was the puzzle piece that's been missing, because I think their defense now is missing some puzzle pieces. Like having Derrick Henry on last year's team would have been great, and they probably won the Super Bowl.
I know Derrick Henry is Hercules, but there's talk to me in week 17. Like talk to me in the playoffs and see if he's able to get 9 yards per carry or bust it 60 yards without getting caught from behind.
Ultimately, it's going to come down to Lamar.
He's got so much.
It's always the question.
Damn tread on the tires. I'm not week 5. Fine. Talk to me in week 15 when it comes to Derrick Henry. Take it or leave it. Pat Mahomes goes for 4 touchdowns tonight.
Leave it. Who's he throwing to, man?
Worthy?
There's one. He'll probably have a big play to Worthy, but Worthy's not a guy that you target 10 times in a game. We've all seen what it looks like with Travis Kelce right now. He's still a good player, but he's not what he once was. And that's pretty much it. Like, you're throwing to Juju Smith-Schuster right now, Justin Watson. McCole Hardman might even be out for this game, it looks like. Not a whole lot to ask for there. So your path to victory tonight for the Chiefs is very slim. They're going to need a very good defensive performance. And if I was betting on anything tonight, Alvin Kamara overs. Just all of the overs. Receptions, receiving yards, touches.
He needs 35 points for carry to beat me in fantasy.
Very in play.
Son of a...
Him against the Chiefs linebackers is a nightmare matchup.
Take it or leave it. You're feeling a lot better because technically Mizzou didn't even get upset. They weren't even favored to win.
I'm not feeling better about it because of the way that they lost that game. But we can talk about this a little bit in the next segment, Brooke. But I did feel better about the loss at the end of the day on Saturday than I did while watching the game on Saturday, if that makes sense. Because that was the early game, and then you saw everything else that took place in college football. I was like, oh, okay. We're not alone.
Hey, they beat Vandy in double overtime.
That's right.
And then Vandy beat Alabama.
Now,
so
Boston
then
College is imploding, but otherwise.
Yeah. As we learned against Norfolk State, when Mizzou does something bad, just hold on because someone's going to do something worse.
You're so right.
And a blue blood at that is going to do something worse. Thank you, Lehigh.
Dude,
and thank you, Vanderbilt.
Lehigh that same exact day. And by the end of the night, Missouri was simply a footnote.
God bless you. I love it when a blue blood screws up and makes us look smaller. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Duke.
Thanks, Rocc. And that was Take It or Leave It. Coming up next, as BK just mentioned there, we have to talk about what went wrong for Mizzou. But did you feel a little bit better after seeing what happened the rest of the weekend? And also, that was the worst Mizzou loss since when? We'll discuss that coming up next here on The Opening Drive.
Pavia keeps it. Pavia picks up the first down, and the unlikeliest of heroes has guided Vanderbilt to what will be its first ever win against number 1. There's Le'Veon Moss, and A&M just keeps rolling. Look at big Le'Veon Moss. He's going to house it to open up the second half.
Yamaliava, this is going to be the last play of the game. Scrambles and is shoved out of bounds. No time left. Arkansas pulls the upset.
Welcome back to the opening drive. Brooke and BKN for Randy Kerber this morning. And our fresh take this morning is, obviously, it was a really wild weekend for college football. You had to start things off, though, with Mizzou losing to Texas A&M on the road. Look, we knew going into this one it would be tough because it's a tough environment, despite what Brady Cook had said about the practices being louder. And by the way, Texas A&M had a lot of fun with that quote because they put it up on the scoreboard during the game with Brady Cook. They had a close-up of him. I'm sure a lot of people have seen that on social media. But as the season or the day went on, you saw obviously Vandy beat Alabama, the number 1 team in the country, and you also saw Tennessee lose to Arkansas. Did your perception of how Texas A&M and that Mizzou game went change after seeing those other losses in the SEC?
So it's both yes and no is the answer to your question. But to be direct, like, ultimately the answer is no for me. It didn't change a lot, and that's because of how they lost. Like, Vanderbilt beat Alabama in a nail biter. And the same was true for Arkansas, right? Tennessee ended up on the doorstep having an opportunity to win that game and just couldn't get it done. Missouri never had a chance. They got blown out of that game, and they kicked a field goal to make it closer than it actually was at the very end. They lose that one by 31 points on the road against a team that was favored. I think it was like 2.5 points by the time that game is kicked off. That's an embarrassing loss for Missouri. The other 2 games are just really frustrating for Alabama and Tennessee. So for me, like I said it earlier today, I would have dropped Missouri out of the top 25 entirely because they have not played like a top 25 team so far this year. You had a couple of easy games off the start, and then you play 2 difficult opponents in Vanderbilt and Boston College, barely win both of those, get blown out against the only real true top 25 caliber team that you faced so far this year in Texas A&M. This was your first true road game as well on the season. So for me, it didn't make me feel much better because my biggest fears about Missouri coming into the season were realized in that game. Anybody that was worried about Brady Cook, well, you saw everything you needed to see. Anybody that was worried about the defense without some of their defensive linemen that they lost via the NFL draft, without their defensive coordinator that they had a year ago, without the corners that they had last year, well, you saw all of that come to fruition on Saturday against Texas A&M. Every fear you had as a Missouri fan was finally realized in one game that actually caught up to them. So that was every bit as bad as the score indicated. It didn't change a lot from my perspective on that after the game on Saturday.
And I know that a lot of people talk about this because when we were discussing it earlier, somebody brought up the fact about the refs in the game, and you could definitely say that it affected things early on. We could talk about that pass interference, the defensive pass interference, and how that can change momentum. But can you really say that the refs were the reason that Mizzou lost this game?
No. I mean, they lost 41-10. If they had lost, like, 17-10, sure, we can bring up the refs. We can talk about how there were a couple of 1 touchdown and a potential long drive that were taken off of the board. It did change the way that the starting or the first quarter went in this game. Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. Nobody should disagree with that. Even if you're a Texas A&M fan, you could probably admit as much. But eventually you got to get stops, and Missouri never got stops. So it's really hard to point to the refs when you're the one that is causing your own mistakes. Missouri, whether it was penalties on the offensive side of the ball or just overall ineffectiveness, and then on the defense side, never being able to get stops, they didn't deserve any benefit of the doubt. So it's really hard for me to cry about the refs coming out of that game. They didn't play well, and that's on you, not on the referees.
And you mentioned that you think Mizzou should not be in the top 25. They dropped to 21 in the nation, the AP top 25. What does this mean for playoffs? Does it also change your thoughts on that for Mizzou?
I mean, your margin for error now is 0. Like, because of what's happened, this is where things might have changed a little bit for me. It does not change the way that I feel about Missouri today. But if you look at the SEC and how things kind of stack up now after what took place on Saturday with Alabama losing and with Tennessee losing, things have opened up a bit. How do you guys feel about them as a 2-loss team getting in? Because that other loss would likely take place, let's say it's at Alabama, right? So your best win on the season will have been against Oklahoma, most likely. You will have no other wins, most likely, by the end of the season against a top 25 opponent that finishes the year there. I don't know that gets you in, given what their schedule is this year. Most seasons in the SEC, if you lose 2 games, I think you're probably into the college football playoff. Do you think you can lose 2 games this year?
No, I really don't think you can.
I think it would require a win against Alabama, and then maybe you lose against Oklahoma. Because at least then you have a dominant win. But that Alabama win doesn't look as good now because they lost to Vanderbilt.
Yeah, and it depends on, too, what happens with the other teams. Tennessee has a really tough schedule. They had to face Alabama and Georgia, so how they perform in those games will really matter. But you're right. I'm looking at their schedule right now. You definitely can't lose to UMass. I hope that doesn't happen. No. Auburn, of course, that's another team you have to beat. Then you face Alabama, which that will be a very tough challenge. I know the people saw the game against Vandy this weekend and say, well, we beat Vandy in double overtime. We should be able to really beat Alabama. Diego Pavia was insane in that game with what he was able to do. Vandy didn't just stumble into that victory against Alabama. They deserved it.
Also,
and then
we
you
can't
have
use
Oklahoma.
the transitive property in college football because we saw Texas A&M go up against Notre Dame earlier this season and lost in that game. And then Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, who has now since been terrible. So transitive property, it doesn't work in college football.
And you're right. You can't lose to Oklahoma. That's another team you can't lose to. Then you have South Carolina. Then you have Mississippi State and Arkansas. We just saw this past week against Tennessee. That was a really tough game that they were able to win against Tennessee.
There's only 2 gimmies left on the schedule. There's only 2 gimmies left on the schedule for Mizzou. It's at Massachusetts and at Mississippi State. You've got to win those 2 games. Those are like 80% in favor of Missouri. Mississippi State's not very good this season. The rest of them are all toss-ups, essentially. Like, it could go in either direction. It's either like a little in favor of Mizzou or a little in favor of the opposition. Alabama is probably more so in favor of the opposition. But other than that, man, it's a really tough spot to be in. This was one of those games. It felt very similar to last year in terms of the ramifications of it to the Kansas State game. And if you win that one, everything is very much on the table for you. If not, now things get a little bit more dicey, and the way that they lost it is the worst part. If you lose that game by 1 score, maybe the committee looks back on it and they're like, you know what? Yeah, it was a tough loss on the road, first true road game of the season. They didn't play very well, but then they fixed everything, and by the end of the year, they got things right. But losing it the way you did, now style points start to matter. Like, you got to go blow some of these teams out.
And every game's been really close for them, for their wins. Their wins have been really close in those games. Looking at Brady Cook specifically, and I mentioned this earlier, of course, you have to look at the offensive line, and they weren't able to do what they were able to do. I think they're missing Javon Foster, the left tackle that they had last season. Clearly, these transfers are not living up to those expectations. But looking at Brady Cook specifically, I think I'm most surprised by how he's performing this season, because I was in the camp of, okay, give him time. He'll start to really pick things up. You had the bye week going into this, so he could maybe build up some more chemistry with his wide receivers, because I thought that was the biggest threat going into the season, is that Brady Cook would be able to get the ball consistently to his wide receiver room, which is super talented. We all know that, right? I'm just really surprised because it felt like from 2022 to 2023, Brady Cook took a major step forward. He was able to push the ball down the field at a much higher rate. His accuracy improved. What do you think has happened this season with him?
I don't know. If you guys have anything that you'd like to throw out there, I'd love to hear it. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. I'm sure there will be some that just say, well, he's never been good. I disagree with that. I think last year Brady Cook, especially down the stretch, was really good for Missouri, and he's a big part of why they were able to do what they did last year. He hasn't been good this year. There's no way around it. I think Brady got a lot of unjust criticism a year ago. I really do. This year, all of it is very much deserved. I thought after the first few games of the season, I was like, he did this last year. He didn't get any big plays early on, and then eventually you saw them go to the deep ball started to hit for him a little bit at a higher rate. There's been none of that this season. It hasn't been working for him. They say he's fully healthy, so I have to take their word for that. I don't believe he's hurt right now. I think he's just not playing well. And like sometimes it's just that simple. If the guy, for whatever reason, has taken a little bit of a step back from where he was this time last year, I think some of that's the offensive line. I think some of that's probably the play calling in this game. They had like nothing across the middle of the field, which was the bread and butter of the offense last year, where you just have the crossing routes all day long to Luther Burden, those deep over routes. It's just disappeared this year. It doesn't seem like they're finding ways other than the play that ended up being called back. But to get Luther Burden the ball in space, I don't know how much of that, it's hard to say because there's no all 22 footage available in college football. I don't know how much of that is the way the defenses are playing them versus what they're doing offensively that is different from a year ago. It's hard to say, Brooke, but Brady Cook specifically, to answer your question, he just doesn't look like the same guy as he did in the second half of last year.
Yeah, from the 9-3-1, he's playing like the 2022 Brady when he was injured. And that's the thing is that we don't know. They're saying that he's healthy. He has dealt with shoulder issues. That's something that we know in the past, and you hope that's something that's not hampering the season. He was sacked 6 times in the game, so the offensive line didn't really help him. But you mentioned this, and we have to be fair here. It is some things that he also could have prevented himself. Another thing that I thought was really interesting, and Martin Kilcoyne tweeted this out. I don't know if you saw this weekend, but after the game, Luther Burden and Brady Cook were not made available for post-game comments. Now, I know a lot of people will say, why does that matter? The media doesn't have to talk to the players all the time, blah, 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 all the different kind of stuff. I see the media, not that you owe the media anything, but it's more of talking directly to the fans. The media is a way to talk directly to the fans about what happened in that game, the emotions from it, all the different kind of stuff. What did you think about Cook and Burden not talking after the game?
I'm not surprised Burden didn't. Burden doesn't talk all the time. I'm a little surprised that Brady Cook didn't talk to the media. He's been good, though. Like, this is not in his character to typically do something like this where he, like, avoids the media. He almost always talks with the media when asked. There's got to be a reason for it. I can't speak to what that was. And sometimes on the road, the media protocols are a little different than what they are at home. It probably doesn't bother me as much as it does for a lot of people. If this was the NFL and you're getting paid to talk to the media.
They are getting paid, though. They have NIL now factoring in.
It's a little different. But sure. I would have a much different perspective on this if it was the NFL. On college football, should he have talked to the media? Sure. Do I think it really would have changed anything? No.
In college football, it's basically NFL Junior at this point because you have NIL factoring into all of this. I just kind of expected after a game like that. Maybe, and here's the thing, to be fair, maybe Drinkwitz said, look, this loss is on me, which he did say in his opening statement. I should be the one who speaks to the media. I don't want you out there because I'm the only one to blame for this.
But
that's another situation.
For you? Like, let's say they had gone out there and talked.
I just think that you should after a game. I think that after a performance like that you should be able to hear from all the players, including your captains of your team. And Luther Burden and Brady Cook are the leaders of your squad.
I don't know that that's necessarily true with Luther. Like Theo Weiss, I think, talked after the game, if I'm not mistaken. I think Christian Williams talked after the game as well. I am surprised that Cook didn't. I want to make that clear. I'm surprised that Cook didn't because he's one of the guys that ended up going to media day. Like, he is one of the captains of the team. That is a guy that I would have expected to talk after the game. I don't know why he didn't. I can't speak to that. Maybe we'll get some kind of a clarification on that over the course of this week. But it doesn't really bother me. It's not something that... What grinds my gears is that they lost 41-10. It does not bother me very much that Brady Cook didn't talk to the media afterwards. And Luther, I didn't even think anything of it.
That's BK. I'm Brooke. Coming up next, the Blues season starts tomorrow, and we will head to the celebrity line to talk to the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. That's next here on The Opening Drive.
You know, I got to my hotel room in Seattle yesterday, and it was cold. Somebody had set the thermostat in the room at 55, and that's Fahrenheit. I mean, you sneezed, and it was snow before it ended up hitting the floor. But I turned the heat on. It went right up. It worked well. That kind of reliability, that kind of immediate comfort is what you want in your own home. And that's what you get with Classic Air Care. Look, if your furnace isn't working right, if your heater isn't working right, if you haven't had it serviced as we start to get ready for the winter months, call them right now, and their number is right on the top of their website at classicaircare.com. You can book an appointment online as well. You want to make sure that as the weather's turning and you're going maybe from some air conditioning to some heat and back and forth depending on the day, you want to know that it's working and that it's working properly. Maybe you've had your windows open, so you want to make sure that those air filters are up to date and you've replaced them properly. You can shop for filters on their website as well. With nearly a century of experience serving St. Louis and surrounding areas, Classic Air Care is the top choice for all things heating and air conditioning. And they've got an expert team that puts your comfort first. You can count on them for amazing service. Check out their 4.8 Google rating with all the reviews right at the top of their website as well. They're St. Louis's trusted home services company providing top quality HVAC service. It's Classic Air Care. I trust them for my house. You can trust them for yours. Again, book an appointment online. Make sure you're ready to go for the changing of the seasons at classicaircare.com.
To the opening drive, we head to the celebrity line to talk to the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. Chris, how are you doing this morning? I guess I should say Kerbs. I don't know why I said Chris. I did that once before to you, and I don't know why I just did that again. You are Chris, but you're Kerbs to us.
Yeah, listen, it was a name I was given. I'm a first name person too, by the way. So
I know it's the proper
I'm
thing
okay
to
with
do.
it. I answer to Chris. That's okay. I answer to Chris. Hey, fat guy, whatever you want. I'm there for you, bro. I can answer to everything.
I'm not going to call you what you just said there. I'm just going to go with Kerbs.
All right.
Kerbs, we finally got preseason play. It is over with, and the season starts tomorrow for the Blues as they face the Seattle Kraken. We're going to go to the preseason play, especially towards the end here. What was your biggest takeaway?
Well, I liked the second to last preseason game. I think that the game in Milwaukee was a bit of a useless game in terms of telling anybody really anything. But the game before that really was, I think, a good one. I like the energy when we had the full unit in there playing against some pretty good players for the Dallas Stars. Here's the one thing that I'm taking into this: when you're in that locker room, when you're around this group, once things kind of got separated and players were sent to their respective minor league teams or junior teams, there's a vibe around the team right now that is a really positive one. I think, sometimes you can go from one season to a next, Brooke, and maybe you don't feel a change, right? And I'd say the beginning of last season might be that way, but what Doug Armstrong did this offseason, some of the signings, the trades, and things that he did, there's a renewed energy, and it's amongst some guys that have been here for a while too. So I think, honestly, more than play itself, that might be the biggest thing I take away from camp.
Kerbs, when I look at this team going into this year, I'm curious how you look at them compared to the lineup that we saw at this point last year. At this point last year, you had, now technically still in the lineup today, but he probably won't be moving forward. Kapanen was in the lineup on an every night basis. Vrana, Hayes, Blay, Sonny, Krug, Scandella, Tucker. Those are all guys that were in the lineup at this point last year. This year, to replace him, you've got Holloway, Texier, Joseph, Foxa, Walker, Broberg, Kessel, and Suter. Do the Blues have a better lineup today than they did at this point last year, Kerbs?
Yeah, I think they do. I think they've got probably a little more known commodities in the lineup this year. You know, back to Kaplan and real quick, I'll tell you something. If there's a veteran player that had to have a really good camp and did have a good camp to probably put himself in the lineup, it would be him, I think. I mean, I think the last few games he played I thought were fantastic. Now, can we see that night in, night out? If we do, that's a really good thing for the Blues. I think the lineup this year compared to last year is a faster lineup. There's a little more size to it. And more importantly, there's a little more jam, and I'm not talking about just always dropping the gloves to rip somebody's head off kind of jam, but there's just a little more edge to it. Redux Foxa plays that big, heavy game that on both ends of the ice you can count on him, and he's hard to move. He's excited to be here. Matthew Joseph likes to stick his nose in there. You've seen some of that aggressiveness here in the training camp. Broberg, the size defensively, really does make a difference. I mean, look, when Matt Kessel with Falk being injured last year went into the top top four rather, now he's in that bottom pairing, and that bottom pairing also is a guy right now that has, going to approach 1,500 games this season in Ryan Suter. I think that there's just a little more jam, a little more size, a little more speed, and a little more predictability in the players that you brought in.
We're talking to radio voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber, as the Blues get ready to start their season. And there's a lot of interesting players to watch here. And I'm trying to think about who will be the breakout player of the season for the Blues. Obviously, Jake Neighbors was a big story, and he could be this year. But could Dylan Holloway or even Texier be one of those guys this season?
Yeah, I talked to Texier, and for him, he said the biggest lessons that he's learned is really how to take care of his body, which I mean, you think about it, it's so cliche. We talk about that in sports all the time, right? But a young guy realizing what it takes to be healthy and effective night in, night out in a sport where we'll be playing at this point, 3 games in 4 days to start the season on a road trip, and that can wear on him over the course of time. So I think Texier is going to get an opportunity. And yes, Dylan Holloway really could be. I was reading some stuff that the NHL put out today on Johnny Gaudreau. And you're reminded, as great of a hockey player as he was, that he was a 4th-round draft pick, right? And then went and played 3 years at Boston College. You think of a Jamie Benn. He was a 5th-round draft pick. And now Holloway was a high 1st-round draft pick. And so there's opportunities for him in this lineup to show that skill, to flash it. And the one thing we saw it with Craig Berube. We'll see it without a shred of doubt with Drew Bannister. You play well, you will earn more ice time with these coaches. And when you do that, like Jake Neighbors, I mean, twice last year, they tried to put Jake Neighbors in the bottom 6, and he just played his way to the top line, right? Well, I think that's the opportunity that Holloway has in front of him.
Chris Kerber is the voice of the Blues, joining us here on a 101 ESPN. Kerbs, what do you make of the Zack Bolduc situation right now for the Blues?
Well, so an interesting scenario here, and I realize that this is maybe a technicality, but I still think the Blues have to make it before they want to hold off until rosters are finally due to, say, put Torrey Krug on long-term IR. And there's a technical side of this to the CBA that impacts how the cap money is accrued, right? So there are 23 guys on this trip here, and the roster has to be 23, but that doesn't count, say, a Brandon Saad, or what. So I don't know how the CBA maneuvering is going to work before that final roster is due to get in. Zack Bolduc is one of those players that if they want to, they could send him down. They've got the ability. So there are times he could end up being one of those guys that just goes down, not even necessarily because of his play, but just because of asset management, and you can do it without having to put somebody else on waivers. Having said that, I think Zack Bolduc had a really good camp. Kind of like Tyler Tucker a year ago had a good camp and earned a spot in the starting lineup for opening night. I think Zack Bolduc has probably done the same thing. We'll see. I don't know whether or not he's going to be in, but we'll see. I think he's earned it like Tyler Tucker did. Then, PK, look, it's really just a matter of him bringing it every single night. I'll use Tyler Tucker, who was put on waivers by the Blues yesterday, and if he's cleared, we'll know today, then he goes down to the minors. And Tyler Tucker, had that opportunity, and then as a young player, you'd expect the inconsistency was there, and that made it hard for him to get back in the lineup. If Zack Bolduc just brings some of that consistency game in, game out, and for him, I think we got to see that shot on a regular basis. You've got to see him get to the right side of the puck. It's his play away from the puck as much as anything. Then he could force himself into the lineup and make them have a hard decision to make. So I think he's earned the right to start the season up here. We'll just see how that shakes out.
Kerbs, as we look to wrap things up here, we always talking about expectations going into the season, and we've asked you that a million times going into it tomorrow, but what is your hope of what the Blues can accomplish this season?
I hope they make the playoffs. I had a member of hockey operations yesterday look at me and say, Kerbs, let's make some noise this year. And I loved it, right? I loved the phrase. I'm like, well, and then the ensuing conversation was, we've got the pieces to make some noise. And I think what he was basically referring to is there's some unknown. We have an opportunity in front of us. Let's play well and take advantage of it. And he feels that there is enough skill on this team to make some noise. We can, if we play smart, and he basically said it's between our ears, if we play smart, this team can maybe, take some prognosticators that don't think they'll be very good and actually be very good. And they have the one thing. They have the one thing that you need to make some noise, and that's goaltending. So they've got the pieces. They've got some youthful excitement, and if that youthful excitement can really put a spark into it, then this team could be in some really good shape. But I think clearly, you have to sit there and say, I think this team is better than last year. They were 6 points out of a playoff spot. They lost a lot of games to bottom-feeding teams. So I think you can legitimately put the playoffs as a real goal for this year, and that's the way the coaches and management are looking at it.
Kerbs, thank you so much for joining us, and we're looking forward to getting the season started tomorrow.
Tomorrow afternoon, how about that? The Blues are the first game on the first North American game on the NHL schedule, right? So it'll be good. It'll be a 3:30 St. Louis time puck drop. So looking forward to giving the fast lane a break and talking some hockey.
All right, thank you so much for joining us, Kerbs, and have a great rest of your day. That was voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber, and as he mentioned there, the pregame will start at 2:30, so you can listen.
Who's furious about that? Fast lane. Fast lane.
No.
They've got 30 minutes.
What?
They've got to come in for 30 minutes. There's nothing worse for them than having to come in for 30 minutes and do their show. You got to prep the whole thing, drive here. Stolzer's going to be driving 100 miles an hour on 270 to get in.
Prep the whole thing?
Yeah, it's tough, man. You got 2 segments. You got to come in, do 2 segments, and then go home. It's a really hard thing to do if you're the fast lane.
Oh, I feel so bad for him, BK.
Rock's like, are you serious?
I feel so bad for him. Man, that's going to be tough. But yes, the Blues, and they already going to
I'm just imagining the difference. I'm just right now imagining the difference between the different shows being given a 30-minute window and how they would all handle it. Yeah. And I'm chuckling is all I can do.
I'm assuming they're going to talk about Blues, but they also could just talk about whatever they want.
You literally walk in, do whatever you want, and you're going to go.
Roll the ball out on the floor. See you in 30 minutes, boys.
Exactly. Well, the Blues pregame will start at 2:30 tomorrow. You can listen right here on 101 ESPN, and the Blues will open their season. Puck drop is at 3:30 tomorrow on the road against Seattle. Coming up next, we have the fight, and it's me today. Unless BK wants to do it. I always just like to ask, when we haven't
But I think you're going to be great. I've already seen the questions, so it would be unfair for me to go ahead and do the fight today.
Wow.
So, that would be cheating.
Man. Oh, okay. All right. Well, if you want to fight me, text into the Air Comfort Service text line. That is 314-399-9646, 314-399-YO-HO. The fight is next.
The NFL season just continues to roll on, and so does the fun over at Underdog Fantasy. Over 1 million fans across 33 states got in the game last year by competing on Underdog. I was one of those fans, and the weekend went okay with me. Took home some W's, had some L's. That's the way you're going to play, but that's what you got to do. You got to put in the entries, and you got to try to make your winnings. The thing is, if you play smart, you're going to walk away with some W's. I didn't play very smart, and when I won, I was playing smarter. I was making the entries that made sense of the games I was watching. That's the best part about Underdog Fantasy. You can put in your entries beforehand, and they can go well for you. And if they're not going well for you, you can jump on and put in some live entries, and you can recoup what's going on. That's what I did during my Sunday. Some of my biggest wins came from those live entries I was putting in, but we're going to put one in for tonight's Monday Night Football game anyway. And here's the entry I'm building. Alvin Kamara higher than 63.5 rushing yards. If you heard BK earlier on the show, I agreed with him. Something about the Saints and Alvin Kamara, they're going to get some work done tonight versus the Chiefs. So take a higher on Alvin Kamara, whichever stat you want to go. I'm going higher on rushing yards. And then we're going to go Xavier Worthy, higher than 0.5 rush and reception TDs, because they got to get him involved in that offense if the Chiefs are going to want to score tonight. So we're going to go Kamara, we're going to go Worthy, we're going to go higher on rushing yards for Kamara, and higher on a score for Xavier Worthy. Making picks on Underdog is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. You just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app at UnderdogFantasy.com. Sign up with the promo code ROCC. Underdog's going to give you a free pick to use in your first Cash Champions entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. It's Underdog Fantasy, promo code ROCC. Claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Must be 18 plus and present this day when Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Consumer play. Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. This is Rocky with your Sports Center update, brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. It was an interesting weekend in college football as the Missouri Tigers, at the time ranked number 9, got slaughtered by Texas A&M 41-10. A&M at the time was ranked number 25, but there was some other top 10 teams that would go down, including number 1 Alabama to Vanderbilt 40-35, number 4 Tennessee to Arkansas 19-14, and then you had number 10 Michigan falling to unranked Washington 27-17. NFL slate finishes up tonight with a Monday Night Football game. You can catch it right here on 101 ESPN. Chiefs and Saints pregame starts at 6:30. That is your Sports Center update, brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
And Kylie for the opening drive. Randy out today. I am in for him. Brooke Grimsley is going to be taking care of the fights today, and she will be taking on Drake on a beautiful Monday morning here in St. Louis. Drake, did your college football team win this weekend? Because mine sure as hell did not.
No, definitely not.
Who are you a fan of?
Well, Mizzou, of course.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm sorry, man. We're all coping with this one. I'm sure better days are ahead. That's how it works for Missouri.
Yes, exactly.
All right, Drake, let's get into this thing. You know the rules of the game. We're going to start out with question number 1 for you. Prior to his All-Pro run with the Chiefs, Priest Holmes was able to win a Super Bowl ring with which other team? Was it A, the Denver Broncos, B, the Baltimore Ravens, or is it C, the New England Patriots? Who did Priest Holmes play for prior to the Kansas City Chiefs and win a Super Bowl with them?
I'm going to say the New England Patriots came to mind, but I don't think that's right. What was A again?
A is Denver, B is Baltimore, and C is New England.
I'm going to stick with it, New England.
Which National Central team has most recently won a game in the NLCS? Not the series. Which National League Central team has most recently won a game in the NLCS? Is it the Brewers, the Cubs, or the Cardinals?
I would say Cubs. I'm going with Cubs.
Question number 3. Which National League team is the last one that the Cardinals have beaten in an NLCS game? Is it A, the Nationals, B, the Giants, or C, the Cubs? The last team that the Cardinals beat in an NLCS game, the Nationals, the Giants, or the Cubs?
We'll go with Nationals. I'll just go with Nationals.
All right, and Jaden Daniels is now officially chasing a number of rookie records, including the record for rushing yards by a rookie quarterback. Who holds that record? Is that Robert Griffin III, Cam Newton, or Michael Vick?
This is through 5 weeks, right?
Yep. Yeah, through Sunday. And your answer was
RG3, yeah.
All right. We'll double check our score. We'll bring in Brooke Grimsley.
Drake, how you feeling? You went through the first 4 questions. You went through the fight for today. How you feeling about it?
It's okay. I feel okay. Well, we'll see.
Well, you've got Brooke Grimsley going up against you today. She's going up against Drake today in the fight. Brooke, say hello to Drake this morning.
Hey, Drake. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I brought grapes today. I am trying my best.
The anti-Randy. Randy typically goes with the soda, right?
No, he does grapes.
Both. He does both. He does soda and grapes. Yes.
Sure, of course.
The grapes are a big thing, BK. Now I know you're not up early enough in the morning to listen to us do the fight.
I'm up. I have a 1-year-old child, so I can assure you I am very much awake.
But yes, Drake, I have the grapes in honor of Randy Carricker today. They probably won't help me, but I thought I would at least give it a shot. And the grapes looked fantastic at the grocery store, so I was like, why not?
I trust you on this one. All right, Brooke, you ready?
Yes.
Question number 1. And are we going with, you get choices? How are we playing it today?
She gets choices on 2. She has to ask for them before we give them to her.
Cool.
I mean,
Number
we can
1.
add more than
just 2
choices.
Prior to his All-Pro run with the Kansas City Chiefs, Priest Holmes was able to win a Super Bowl ring with which other team?
That would be the Ravens, because I actually worked in a split market in Arkansas. So it was Fort Smith, Fayetteville, and he was from Fort Smith, Arkansas.
There you go.
And I remember that.
Okay.
Yes. The big market 99 in TV. So with the way that local TV works, not much going on.
I wrote the question.
I think was market like 127.
Yeah.
When I was there.
I wrote the
Was it
question because I wanted a Chiefs connection for BK, but I didn't realize I was going to get a Brooke Grimsley connection.
How'd you know?
All right, fair enough.
Because we celebrate a lot of greats there from
There we
Fort
go.
Smith, Arkansas area.
All right, Brooke, number 2. Which National League Central team has most recently won a game in the NLCS?
Won a game in the NLCS.
Yeah, just one singular game.
Well, obviously we can narrow down the options on this one. Can you repeat it for me?
Which National League Central team has most recently won a game in the NLCS?
Well, it's not the Pirates. That's for sure.
Potentially one option. Wanted to make sure I didn't make the same mistake that I did earlier.
Did you make a mistake earlier?
A couple of weeks ago, I potentially gave one away. Now, the question was already answered correctly, so it wasn't a huge deal.
Oh,
but
okay. I didn't know if it happened earlier today.
That was well done.
No, there's no justice for anybody today. I don't want to see any of that on the text line at 314-399-9646. I don't need that.
You can start it. Justice for Drake. I would go with the Brewers here.
The Brewers?
The Brew Crew.
That's also an answer you could give. That's all I'm going to say. Nothing more, nothing less. Question
You're
number
so
3.
scared.
Which National League team is the last one that the Cardinals have beaten in an NLCS game? Which team did the Cardinals last defeat in an NLCS game?
Give me the options here.
Is it A, the Nationals, B, the Giants, or C, the Cubs? Washington, San Francisco, or Chicago?
It's not the Cubs, because I was there for that 2015 series.
Somebody said justice for BK. That's right.
There we go.
Justice for BK. The Nationals? I'll go with the Nationals.
Okay.
Final.
All right, and Jaden Daniels is now officially chasing a number of rookie records, including the record for rushing yards by a rookie quarterback. Who holds that record?
Can I get the options? Since you see, I have a tactic
Yeah,
now.
no, there's
Just try to
nothing wrong with
save
it.
them
Nothing wrong
towards
with
the
it.
end.
It's well played.
Randy usually saves his for 4 as well. Is it Robert Griffin III, Cam Newton, or Michael Vick?
Ooh. Cam Newton and RG3 had really good
That's a good question.
rookie seasons. I would go with Cam. I feel like I remember Cam Newton's 2011 run is really good.
All right. We have a winner in today's fight. And ooh, this was a close one. Brooke taking on Drake. Does the Grim Reaper take another soul? Or does Drake walk away with another victory? It works with the nickname, all right? Roll with me, people here. Come on. Gosh, you know what? This just reminds me. I keep saying Mizzou got slaughtered, and I'm honestly waiting to get a text me like, that's a little bit of an aggressive word to use. Anyhow, who's the winner in today's fight? Ring that bell.
The winner and still champion of the fight, Randy Carricker.
Just win, baby. Nicely done, Brooke Grimsley. You took down Drake by a score of 2-1. You were close, Drake, but not close enough. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay. I got one last time I fought Randy. So.
There you go. You're consistent. That's the name of the game is consistency,
Hey,
Drake.
Next time you're going to get 2, and I believe
all I
in you.
try to be is consistent.
There you go. Let's go to the questions and answers. Prior to his All-Pro run with the Chiefs, Priest Holmes was able to win a Super Bowl ring with which team? He was an undrafted free agent, signed with the Baltimore Ravens in 1997, and he was on that 2000 squad that did walk away with a Super Bowl victory. Yes, behind Jamal Lewis. Which National League Central team has most recently won a game in the NLCS? Well, you see here, ladies and gentlemen, the Cardinals, they got swept in that 2019 NLCS. So the 2018 Brewers are the last time a team has NL Central team has won a game in the NLCS. They lost in 7 games to the Los Angeles Dodgers in that NLCS.
Cardinals, however, the last NL Central team to win a series in the postseason, and that was in 2019. It's been 5 years since a Central Division team has won a series.
But
that's crazy when you think about it.
As we learned, they did not win an NLCS in 2019. They were swept by the Nationals. So which National League team is the last one that the Cardinals have beaten in an NLCS game? You have to go all the way back a decade when they took down the San Francisco Giants in a game in the NLCS in 2014. Wow. That is the last time they have won a game in the NLCS.
Oh, that stinks.
And Jaden Daniels is now officially chasing a number of rookie records, including the record for rushing yards by a rookie quarterback, which is held by Robert Griffin III.
I feel like I saw this.
2-1 win for Brooke today in the fight. Thank you again, Drake, for joining the fight and joining the show.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for joining us, Drake. Man, now that's going to haunt me about the RG3 one, because I'm pretty sure I saw that on social media the other day, and I was thinking...
I got it.
I don't think I did see that the other day. I would have guessed Michael Vick. That would have been my guess on that one. Would have been wrong. Would have been wrong.
I'm saying any Monday that you want to do this, BK, you're more than welcome to for the fight.
Mike Vick only ran for...
his rookie season, I don't think that...
Mike Vick only played 8 games and started 2 his rookie year, so he only had 300 yards rushing. But here's the thing: Mike Vick 777 in his second year, 902 in his third year. So even in his second year, I don't think he would have broken RG3's record, which is in the high 800s.
I don't know why I forgot about it, but Cam Newton, he did have an incredible rookie season. If I remember correctly.
Cam was awesome right away.
Yeah, and then
Cam's one of the best college football players I've ever seen. He immediately came into the NFL, and it was like, this guy is dominant.
Somebody, I can't remember who it was over the weekend, but they one of the podcasts got talking about Cam Newton, and they brought up the game that I always think of when I think of Cam Newton, which is the LSU game, because there were times where there was a play where a guy trips him up and he's stumbling in the open field, and he catches his feet and he gets running, and there are defensive backs barreling in on him, and then he pulls away from the guys that weigh 30 to 40 to 60 pounds less than him. It's the most athletic thing I've ever seen.
He only ran for 700 yards, ran for 700 yards as a rookie, but he ran for 14 touchdowns that year. He was a battering ram.
He was insane.
They used him as if he was a fullback in like goal line situations. I know over the weekend, Greg Olson was talking about this on the broadcast. He apparently talked to Jaden Daniels because Cam had said, I like getting hit early. It makes me feel like I'm a part of the game. And so he asked Jaden Daniels, hey, is this something that's also part of your game? He said, nah, man, I don't want to get hit. I was like, that's a great, it's exactly what you would want to hear.
Yeah,
from
you want your
Jaden
quarterback
Daniels
to be healthy, especially him. All right, that's BK. I'm Brooke and Rocc. Coming up next, the Cardinals made the necessary move to fire Turner Ward. But what will his replacement tell us about the team's direction? We'll discuss that coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
also depends on what our revenues look like. So it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg scenario, but something that we are working through. But I feel like we just have to be transparent and let people understand expectations. And so ultimately this offseason might look a lot different than maybe the previous 17 I've been involved in or 25 I've been involved in. And so, ultimately I still think we're going to have an exciting product to put on the field. I do think expectations for some of our younger players to take that step forward will definitely be our off-season focus. So we actually see that type of return when we get back on the field. But it is going to be a different offseason.
That is Cardinals Pobo John Mozeliak on KMOX with Tom Ackerman discussing Turner Ward. As we saw on Friday, they made the necessary move, I think we can all say, to move on from Turner Ward. I think fire is a very interesting word there because technically his contract just ended and they decided not to have him return with the team. And so that was a decision that was made, and rightfully so, because we wanted to see changes within the organization. The big conversation in the press conference last week, BK, and the discussion was what is happening with this team moving forward. They're focusing on player development, but my big question was what's changing at the major league level for player development? And offensively, you look especially at these past two seasons for the Cardinals, and especially this past season with the Cardinals, somebody had to go, something had to change offensively for this team because it was just not working out for them.
Yeah, and the other thing is, they're just going in a new direction, right? Like, one of the reasons why Turner Ward was the hitting coach is because of his relationship with Paul Goldschmidt. Well, if Paul Goldschmidt's not going to be returning next season, that takes away one of the biggest reasons as to why you have this individual as your hitting coach. The Cardinals told us all season long, we believe in our hitting coaches. We believe that they're the best guys for the job. And now that's changed. Now they are telling us they are no longer the best individuals for the job, or at least this person is not the best person for the job. And I think they're right. I don't know if Turner Ward is the best hitting coach in the world or the worst hitting coach in the world. I would say probably somewhere in between. I'd say probably fine. And I don't know if the next guy is going to be the one that unlocks whatever the potential is of this offense. But I know Turner Ward wasn't the guy because we had seen it. And we had seen Nolan Gorman go through an all-time slump here. We saw Jordan Walker go from being a really productive rookie player to somebody that just didn't look right offensively for the vast majority of this season. We saw Goldie and Arenado fall off of a cliff this season. We saw the slumps for some of these guys take way too long to get out of. Lars Nootbaar was never able to figure out his ground ball problem this season. Alec Burleson went from being amazing in the first half to being a guy that couldn't buy a hit for the vast majority of August and September. You see all of those different things. It took Victor Scott going back down to AAA and having what should have been a very obvious and easy change for him with that leg kick that they apparently had Ryan Ludwig teach him. It took him going back down to learn something like that. These are all just little breadcrumbs that signify, yeah, it's probably time for a change. And that doesn't mean Turner Ward is the worst person in the world at his job. It just means it wasn't the right guy for this job at this time. I think they got this decision absolutely correct. What I'm going to be interested in, though, Brooke, is who is the next guy in charge? Who is the next hitting coach that's going to be taking over for the St. Louis Cardinals? And what does that tell us about the direction of the team? Is this an Ollie choice? Is it going to be a former Cardinal? Like, is somebody like a John Jay going to be a part of this this coaching staff next year, maybe in a hitting coach capacity? Is it a former player? Is it somebody that has connections to Chaim Bloom? Is there somebody that was within the Rays organization or the Red Sox organization, or some of those guys from the Rays have now gone to the Dodgers or the Giants? Is there a connection there that he can pull from, and he gets that connection in front of Ollie and they have a conversation, and then that's the direction they go? That's what I'm most interested in this is, what does it tell us about the future direction of the Cardinals as an organization?
Well, it's really interesting, too, because also in Katie Woo's piece, she cited that they are keeping assistant hitting coach Brandon Allen on staff, so it's unclear if maybe he will get promoted. But you're right. I think the next move will really show what direction they're taking the team, because with Turner Ward, it really seems like his relationship with Paul Goldschmidt is something that really carried this through, because the past two seasons under his watch, in that time, St. Louis ranked 21st in runs scored and 16th in OPS in all of Major League Baseball. So those are things that you can't have happen there. Do you look outside the organization, you think? If you're Ollie or whoever's making this decision, do you look outside this organization, maybe somebody who isn't part of the Cardinals' way, to take over this role?
It's not. So my thing is, I don't care either way. I really don't. Just find the best person for the job. Like, I feel this way about when they were starting to look into, okay, who's going to be the next president of baseball operations, right? A lot of people just say, okay, look internally, look at the obvious candidates. I don't know if Chaim Bloom's going to do well or if he's going to fail spectacularly as the Cardinals president of baseball operations. But I'm glad they're going with somebody that wasn't already here. Some fresh voices, a fresh perspective, I think is good for this organization. I think they've been lacking that for far too long. On the hitting coach side of things, if they deem the best person for that job to be John Jay, who previously worked here, or Matt Holliday, if he's interested now in getting back involved at the big league level, whoever they deem it to be, fine. Just don't make it a prerequisite. I don't want them to just say, okay, who are the people that we know, that we have been around for the last 15 years? Let's go with that guy because we're comfortable with that. No, go interview some people that you don't know, that you don't have a previous history with, that weren't a part of the Cardinals organization for the last 20 years. Go talk to somebody that's in the Rays organization. Go talk to somebody that's in the Dodgers organization. If nothing else, it will inform you as to what they're doing. It gives you ideas. Okay, this is what the best organizations are doing right now across Major League Baseball. What can we pull from them? Kind of similar. It reminds me of the interview that John Mozeliak did after signing Sonny Gray, where Sonny Gray had apparently asked the Cardinals, like, hey, do you have X, Y, and Z as a part of your pitching staff, your coaching staff for the pitchers? And the Cardinals were like, no, tell me more about that. It shouldn't have taken Sonny Gray to teach them how far behind they were on the pitching side of things, but it did, and they apparently fixed some of that stuff because of Sonny's asks. Do that on the hitting side of things now by going out and talking to hitting coaches and finding out, where are we behind? What are we missing that these other really smart organizations are seeing? And in those conversations, you might find that another guy is actually a better fit for this organization than somebody that you've known for the last 20 years.
And to your point, too, if we're talking about player development and getting the most out of these guys within the organization, instead of continuing to work from behind and being reactionary, that's what you're talking about, is being proactive with your organization. Exactly. Because a lot of these moves that have led them to this point were very reactionary. And also with Sonny Gray, I don't think that was a surprise. Now looking at this situation, and especially other reports came out about how little of a coaching staff they had available for the minor leagues, it really shows you that they knew that this was a situation and they still made that choice to not really supplement their minor leagues and their player development. And it's something that finally caught up to them. So I'm really interested. We got some texts coming in. I know I've seen this on social media where people are asking, what about Albert Pujols? What about Jim Edmonds? What about Matt Holliday as the hitting coach for the Cardinals? That seems like it would be a big ask. It would be fantastic, but I just can't see that happening. Can you?
Yeah, I mean, Jim's been asked, or he's been talked about for a decade to be potentially the hitting coach here in St. Louis, and it's never come together. So my guess is he's not interested, the Cardinals aren't interested, somewhere in between. That I would say that has like a very low percentage chance. Holliday, it's just a matter of, does he want to do it? Like, does Matt Holliday want to be a hitting coach at the big league level right now? He had the opportunity to be the bench coach here, decided, hey, my kids are getting ready to be of draft eligibility age. I'm not ready for that yet. His other son is about to be draft eligible this year. Does he really want to spend this season before his son is getting drafted in a bench capacity somewhere with the Cardinals? I don't know. I would think maybe next year makes more sense from that perspective. I would also think he's probably going to be a bench coach, not a hitting coach, whenever he gets to the big league level, because he's got aspirations to be a manager. So I don't know that that's the role that he would probably immediately want to be a part of for the Cardinals. On the Albert side of things, it's Albert Pujols, man. Do you really think that he's just going to come in and be a hitting coach at the big league level? If Albert's getting back in that capacity, think about how much... I don't think people realize maybe how much time goes into being a coach at the major league level and how thankless that job is.
The pay
is not what it is as a manager either. Like, it's just, I don't think they could make it worth Albert's time. So if you're going to bring in Albert Pujols, I think you do so as a manager. Like, Stephen Vogt got a job as a manager right away. If that dude is getting it, I bet you Albert Pujols can get a managing job right away whenever he's ready for one. He's already managing down in the Dominican in the Winter League this year, I believe. I don't think either of those are options. If you're going to have a hitting coach that you know the name of, it's probably like a John Jay. Maybe it's a Brandon Allen who was already on the staff in the assistant hitting coach capacity, and now he takes the major league job over full time. Though maybe Ryan Ludwig. Those are probably the names that you know of already that could potentially be candidates here.
Ryan Ludwig would be great just for the fact of what you talked about earlier with Victor Scott II, what he was able to identify. Because I remember he just approached from the batting cage and said, look, you got to change this about what you're doing. And it worked out for Victor Scott II. If he was able to identify it. Yeah.
Like maybe that's just one of those things where, hey, don't fix what's not broken. Leave him in his role that he's already got right now, roving down in the minor leagues, helping you down there, and hire somebody that's ready to go to be a big league hitting coach. I would like them, if I had my druthers like, hey, BK, what would you like to see them do? I would like to see them go outside of the organization and hire somebody that I've never heard of, that I have no experience with whatsoever, and that they went out, did a full national search, had some connections with Chaim Bloom, John Moselle, whoever, Ollie, I don't care who the connection is to. This guy has had a proven track record, and they can show us, hey, look at what this guy has done to develop players. Cool. Let's see what it looks like here. And then you find out.
I would too. I think that's the way that they should go. And it seems like that's the direction they're taking things anyways with Chaim Bloom taking over. I'm Brooke, that's BK. And coming up next, we have the rush hour reset. And we have to talk about Mizzou once again, because this weekend was just absolutely shocking in college football, but especially for that Texas A&M loss. We'll discuss that coming up next here on The Opening Drive.
recapping the biggest stories of the day on the opening drive with a Rush Hour Reset.
Brought to you by James Carlton State Farm. Are your car and home insurance rates competitive?
Find out at carltoninsurance.net.
You got one or two choices. You can fall apart or you can dig deep and find resolve to get better. The season really starts today, and how we respond will determine what kind of football season we're going to have. So, at the end of the day, this is one loss, and it's a tough loss because you're embarrassed by the performance. I'm embarrassed by the performance, but it's just that. It's one game, and there's a whole heck of a lot of football left. And it's going to be up to us to either seek comfort in placing blame or have resolve to get it fixed.
That is Mizzou head football coach Eli Drinkwitz, Brooke and BK here, and Matthew Rocchio. And you heard him. The season starts now. So just forget about everything else that you saw. We can forget about that Texas A&M loss. I don't even remember what happened that game. Do you, BK? Because the season starts now for Mizzou.
I would love to do the Men in Black flashy thing in front of my face and just never remember a moment of that game. That'd be great for me. Unfortunately, it did happen.
It's a neuralizer, please.
The 2 weeks prior against Boston College and against Vanderbilt, they were made to look even more ominous in retrospect than they were at the time, because at the time you could explain them away and be like, you know what, they found a way to win. Maybe Boston College a little bit better than we gave them credit for. Maybe Vanderbilt, as we saw this past weekend, a little better than we gave them credit for. Diego Pavia, very much a giant killer. And then this week happened. And you go on the road in your first true road test of the season and you get your butts whipped. And so I left the weekend saying, the people that viewed Missouri as frauds nationally were proven correct. I can't push back. How could I? They won the last two games against lesser than opponents by one score. They lost this game and lost in miserable fashion. Yes, Tennessee lost. Yes, Alabama lost, but they lost close games. Missouri got its butts whipped. There was nothing about that game that I can look back on and say, well, at least they did this thing well. They did nothing well over the weekend. And now they have lost all margin for error. If you were somebody that was calling Missouri a fraud prior to the weekend, and I'm a Mizzou honk, I didn't believe it. I thought they were going to win that game. If you were somebody that was on the other side, you were proven correct, and I was proven exceptionally wrong in that one.
I think a lot of people were. And look, you said that there was nothing that was great about Mizzou. There's nothing that you could write home about. But what do you think was the most disappointing aspect of the game? Because I think for me, I was shocked defensively. Now, look, I know that you could say that there's been a lot of close games. I thought defensively things looked fine. I knew that the secondary was young. I knew that there's a lot of differences. You have Corey Batoon taking over too, and sometimes it doesn't matter. It's more about the personnel side of things. But the Tigers entered week 6 with the SEC's 4th best run defense, allowing only 92 yards per game and 1 score. The Aggies ran 236 yards and 5 touchdowns in the game. That is the part that was most disappointing to me.
No doubt. The defensive line in general, not being able to get any pressure whatsoever, and then just getting blown off the ball in the running game. It was shocking. It's as dominant of a performance at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball for Texas A&M's defensive line and then their offensive line as well, that you'll see all season long. So that was a huge disappointment for me. But honestly, my bigger disappointment was the other side of the ball, the running game. Missouri was able to get nothing going offensively on the ground. I think part of that was they got behind so big so early that it just couldn't be a part of their game plan any longer. Eventually, you've got to start throwing the ball around to try to get back into the game. But they finished the game with 30 carries for 68 yards. Now, some of that is college football stupid, and they take into account sacks in the running game. So Brady Cook ended up with 11 carries for 11 yards. But their running backs on the day, 18 carries for 56 yards. That's not the way that this team is supposed to be constructed. A lot of people have talked about, hey, but Cody Schrader was great last year, and he was. Prior to this game, Missouri's running game was actually more productive this season than it had been last year. And then in this game, it just completely fell apart. I can't explain it. A lot of that is a credit to Texas A&M, credit where it is due. They were awesome, and their defensive end set the edge really well against that outside zone running scheme that Missouri likes to run. Missouri just got, they were going up against the final boss and got destroyed in this one. That's what it felt like. And instead of the final boss, which was supposed to be Alabama, they felt like 3 levels short of it, and they went on the road against Texas A&M, a fine, good team, not a great one, and got mollywopped. Just embarrassing.
It just felt like they didn't have an answer back. There was no response from them whatsoever. And I think that's the part that is just really shocking to see, is that there wasn't a response from this team. And I understand, too, that there was maybe a different quarterback in there than maybe they were prepared for. But that's the thing, is that you have to make adjustments throughout the game, right? You have to make adjustments at the beginning of the game, knowing that it'll be Wickman who is taking over, who looked fantastic, by the way. I know the expectation was Reed, but don't you remember earlier in the week, Drinkwitz kind of scoffed at the notion that there would be any sort of like quarterback controversy going on with Texas A&M, and it almost felt like they weren't prepared for Wickman in that situation.
Yeah, but it was the running game that really killed them, so it's almost hard to say like it was the passing game or Connor Wiegman. He had a great game. He was really good in this one. That was the NFL draft prospect that people have been telling us that Connor Wiegman was supposed to be, and not the guy that I think pretty clearly was not healthy early on this season. But the running game's what killed Mizzou, and that did not take any sort of like preparation changes from what the quarterback situation would have been. Missouri just got beat. And so I got a text earlier, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line, Brooke, and somebody asked, BK, is this about the Jimmies and Joes, the guys that are on the field, or is it about the coaching not being up to snuff? It's always a combination of both, but I'm for the first time starting to wonder if it's more about the players. Because previously I thought there was maybe some coaching stuff that could have been changed. I thought the defensive coordinator switched to Corey Batoon. I thought he had done a really good job for the most part so far this year. I did not think he coached very well in this game. Some of that, though, is just playing the results. But the biggest thing is the linebackers were nowhere to be seen in this one, and you missing some of the linebackers that you had a year ago. The defensive line had zero pressure. You missed Darius Robinson in this game. Your corners made zero plays. You're missing Ennis Rakestraw and why am I blanking on the other guy's name from Louisiana? It doesn't matter.
Right, yeah.
Other corner that they had from last year that ended up going to the Denver Broncos this year. But they had 2 NFL corners, and that's something that's very difficult to make up a year later. So, yeah, they're in a bad spot right now. I'm curious to see how they respond. This weekend, you got to get a win against UMass. That's an obvious one. But beyond that, like, Auburn's not a cupcake. They're not a great team. That's a team you could absolutely lose to. Alabama, Oklahoma, on the road at South Carolina. These are losable games now. So what once felt like a very ceiling season is now feeling like, what's the floor? I don't know.
Just to itch your brain, Chris Abrams drain.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That's the thing, is that you look at the rest of the schedule and you wonder about what this means, that loss this weekend, what it means for the playoffs, because they also pay attention to how you lost those games too. And it wasn't a close contest whatsoever.
No, it was an embarrassing performance, right? In that one against Texas A&M. You did nothing well. You weren't alone, thankfully. It was Tennessee getting a loss, Alabama taking a loss, a bunch of upsets this weekend in college football. I don't think there's a great team in college football this year. I know somebody will probably text in and say, BK, what about Texas? We'll see. We'll see what happens with Texas the rest of the way. I think they're a very good team. I don't think they're as good as Texas was last year. I think there's potential losses on the schedule still remaining at Texas A&M, and then the game against Georgia, which is coming up as well. I don't think there's a great team, and it's why I think right now when you look at the Heisman odds, the running back from Boise State is the current favorite to win the Heisman. That tells you everything you need to know about where we're at with this college football season. A running back from a good, not great Boise team at the back half of the top 25 right now, with a loss already on the season, by the way, is currently the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy.
Which is crazy. But he does have great numbers.
I was going to say, he's been excellent. He's deserving.
He's just off Barry Sanders' record pace, and he's played one half in 2 of their games.
Totally.
And he's had 187 at like 180 some yards at half twice. Like, he's on the Barry Sanders pace, and I have so much fun watching him. Genty is so much fun to watch. Like, if you don't understand how, like, if you're just like, yeah, the NFL is more fun to watch because there's passing offenses, go back and understand how people fell in love with the NFL in like 1965, because this dude is an entire offense just himself. It's so much fun to watch.
Totally in agreement with everything you just said. He's amazing. This is not how it works typically. If you're a group of 5 player, you're ineligible from the moment that the season starts to win this award. The last time that we saw a non-Power 5 player win the Heisman was 1990 when Ty Detmer won it with BYU. It's been more than 30 years since we've seen a non-Power 5 player win the Heisman Trophy. There's a reason for that. Normally it goes to the best player on the best team that puts up a big season, right? Typically the best quarterback on the best team. So you look at it, and where we're at right now, it's a guy that is on a 4-1 Boise State team that's breaking a bunch of records. He's been amazing. But that's it.
In that number, do you by chance see any what the highest second or third place? It would be close. Like the highest Power 5, Heisman.
I didn't look
finisher.
into the finishers.
Now
so
I got to figure this out. Damn it.
Yeah.
I just got the winner for you.
But
Last time that you got the winner was Ty Detmer in 1990. They had Andre Ware in 1989 as well. With
guessing that Colt Brennan's third place finish in 2007 is the highest FCS finish in the last 20 years.
That feels right. I don't know.
So it just, but I mean, there's no one else is jumping out of in my head right now. It's insane what he's doing.
It speaks to where we're at with this college football season. Typically, you would have somebody from Georgia or Alabama or Oregon or Ohio State, Texas, somebody that would be up there. We just don't have that this year.
Yeah, that's BK. I'm Brooke, and that is Rocc. Coming up next, the Blues season starts tomorrow. How does this team compare to this time last year? That's coming up next year on the opening drive. And BK and Rocc here, and the Blues start their season tomorrow on the road. They will be facing the Seattle Kraken. You can listen here on 101 ESPN to the pregame show, which will start at 2:30. As we mentioned, it'll be a rough day for the Fast Lane tomorrow because they will have about 30 minutes of a show going into that one because puck drop is at 3:30. I'm sure they are very stressed out about that one. But as we look at how preseason play went, and we also see the new additions that the Blues have, How does this team compare to this time last year, in your opinion? I think, honestly, I feel better about this team going into the season this year just because of the new additions. I think that Joseph was a great addition, Matthew Joseph. I liked what I've seen from him during preseason play. Dylan Holloway, I wasn't expecting him, and maybe this is just me, my own opinion of this. I didn't know if he would be elevated to a top 6 role this early into the season.
Yep.
Now, I was kind of hoping to see Bolduc or maybe even Dvorsky a part of this conversation, but I'm not surprised that they're not a part of the conversation this early on. It'll be interesting to see what happens when Brandon Saad returns too, because you mentioned Kasperi Kapanen is someone that we've seen elevated to a higher role too, and you would assume that when Saad is back, he's dealing obviously with paternity leave. I'm expecting him to be back in a top 6 role. But how do you feel about this group going into it?
I think it should be more interesting. I think you have I think you have guys in your top 9 this year that I trust more than at this point last year. Like, I think the place that I would point is the third line specifically. This time last year, your third line was Vrana, Hayes, and Blais. That was your opening night third line. Vrana, Hayes, and Sammy Blais. This year, now, for the actual opening night, it'll be happening. My guess, I could be wrong on this, but my guess is he's the one that's going to be pulled out of the lineup whenever Brandon Saad returns. So let's use that as the placeholder for now. It'll be Joseph, Shin, and Saad. Now, again, let's think about it. Shin, Saad, Joseph versus Vrana, Hayes, and Blais. I like going through lineups, Brooke, in Major League Baseball and looking at who they're batting 6th. It tells you a lot about the depth of the lineup because you know teams are going to push 1 through 4. That's going to be your best guys in the lineup. Typically where you can see, okay, who are the truly deep lineups compared to the ones that are just okay? You go to that 6-hole hitter and you'll find that kind of separates, in my opinion, the best from the ones that are just okay where they're very top heavy. Like you look last night, San Diego Padres, for example, who they had batting 6th in their lineup was Xander Bogaerts. Pretty darn good. Who did the Dodgers have batting 6th in their lineup? Well, it was Will Smith. Pretty darn good. You look at who the Cardinals had batting 6th for the vast majority of the season. A little less good in that regard. I like what the third line looks like right now for them. I look at what you have defensively, the third pairing compared to what they had at this point last year. Very different. At this point last year, you had Tyler Tucker as one of those guys. I trust Suter more than I trusted Tucker early on last season. So I think they're a better team, a more interesting team, and I think they're a much deeper team.
I also hope, too, that Justin Falk, that we'll see a healthier version of him this season. I like what I've seen from him in preseason play, and also he was a part of a power play, the first power play unit, as we were able to see during the preseason, too. I think a healthy Justin Falk could be a huge factor for the Blues this season. As you mentioned, I like the additions they have. I think Texier is another interesting person in this conversation when you're looking at the top 6, because I don't know if you noticed in one of the preseason games, they actually had Texier centering the second line, and we talked about that very briefly.
Very briefly. It was like 2 shifts, but they did do it.
Still, they did do it, and I think it's something to watch, especially with that conversation of Buchnevich, if he will continue to be the second line center for this team.
I think it's
forward.
the number 1 storyline for the Blues early on in the season is what he looks like at center. Because I don't know. My personal expectation is I don't think he's going to have that spot very long. Not because I'm down on Pavel Buchnevich. I love Pavel Buchnevich, and I think he's an excellent winger for you. I don't know that this experiment with him being at center is going to work long term. And I think they might even know that internally.
It feels like a Band-Aid, right?
Yeah.
Until they have somebody else elevate
Either
to that role.
Dvorsky's ready to go, or probably more likely, when Oskar Sundqvist is back and healthy and good to go for them, I think you probably see Braden Shin centering that second line. I think Roddick Foxen moves up to the third line, and Oskar Sundqvist ends up as your fourth line center. And that's the way that they make things work. But early on this year, if Buch ends up being great at center, unlikely, but it's possible, I suppose. I got to leave that open for you. If he ends up being great, it is a really good thing, and it opens up a lot of possibilities for the Blues long term. I'm just not anticipating it. So, to me, it's the number 1 question.
I'd rather see him be on the wing, honestly. That's just me personally. And it also felt going into the season is that Buchnevich was just kind of there as a Band-Aid, as I said, just to get them through until somebody else is ready to elevate to that role to being the second line center. I think Dylan Holloway is another factor here. Jake Neighbors, I expect him to continue. Now, will he have another season like he did last year? Who knows? If he did, that'd be fantastic. unrealistic. I don't know if my expectations are at that level with him, but if he can at least do or produce close to what he did last season, that'd be huge for the Blues going into the year.
Yeah, 20 to 25 goals, kind of my expectation going into it. He's getting top line minutes, so we'll see what that looks like for him. I think the matchups will certainly be more difficult than what he dealt with for especially the first half of last year. But he's a good player. I expect him to put up points, and now it just comes down to, like, what's the ceiling look like for him? Is he a true top-line player, or is he more of a top-6 kind of a winger?
That's BK, I'm Brooke. And coming up next, we have our NFL highlights and lowlights. That's coming up next here on The Opening Drive. Hey everyone, it's Brooke here for Universal Windows Direct. Football season is here, and you know what that means. Fall is here too, and with the cooler temperatures on the way, it's time to make sure that your home is ready to go. If you've been dealing with drafty windows all summer, struggling on those crazy hot days, your AC working overtime, now is the perfect time to upgrade with Universal Windows Direct before the cold weather starts to kick in here soon. Their windows feature super spacer technology, which makes the windows perform better, last longer, and helps keep your home more comfortable no matter the season. Plus, Universal Windows Direct backs it all up with a true lifetime warranty as long as you own the home and a 20-year warranty to the next homeowner. Schedule your free in-home estimate today, and for every 2 windows you buy, get the next 2 for free. Plus 0% financing for 60 months. That's 5 years. Restrictions apply. Mention my name and get an additional $250 off your next project. So call this number right now. It's 314-334-2522 or go to uwd.com. That's uwd.com. And like me, you'll be saying, I love my windows.
This is Rocky with your Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Over the weekend, at the time number 9 ranked Missouri Tigers fall to Texas A&M 41-10. The Tigers are now ranked 21st in the current rankings. Inactive Illinois, by the way, did move up as well. They are now ranked 23rd in that poll. There were some other changes thanks to number 1 Alabama falling to Vanderbilt 40-35. Number 4 Tennessee falling to Arkansas 19-14. And both the number 10 and 11 squads, that's Michigan and USC, were also upset by unranked conference opponents. Blues are in action starting their season tomorrow. Blues and Kraken. You can catch that right here on 101 ESPN and 101ESPN.com. You can hear more Blues talks with our interview with Chris Kerber. That'll be on our Dobbs Tire Auto Center podcast later on. Today on 101 ESPN tonight, it's Monday Night Football as the Chiefs face off against the Saints. Pregame starts at 6:30. That is your Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Fourth down. Free runner, Owusu Koromoa missed him. And Daniels has the first down and more. Down the sideline, it's first and goal. Williams, more, end zone. He's got it. Touchdown.
It's Burrow quickly outside. Chase looking for blocks from his tight end. He gets 2 of them, and he's off to the races. It's a foot race. Looking against Stevens. Jamar Chase, touchdown. Nope, he missed it. Wide left.
Minshew looking. Throws intercepted by Surtain. Pat Surtain on the run. Nobody's going to catch him.
Quick throw. Intercepted. Van Ginkel down the sideline. Touchdown. Another pick six.
That is a little look back at what happened this weekend with NFL highlights and lowlights, and that's what we're going to get into now. Brooke and BK and Rockio here. There is a lot to go over from this weekend. There was a lot of low points and there was a lot of high points. I want to start out with the highlights first, BK. And so I want to focus.
Your Titans didn't play, so that's a highlight for you this weekend.
All right.
You didn't get lost.
Okay.
Congratulations. No Will Levis throwing the ball to the other team this weekend. That had to be great for you.
Yeah, it was a fantastic. You know, they got a spirit win because they didn't do anything this past weekend to embarrass me. Will Levis finally didn't embarrass me this weekend. That's because he didn't play, BK.
See,
so
there's
you're
your
right.
highlight.
There's one of my highlights. So the other highlight would be Jaden Daniels and what he's doing with the Commanders. So after a 34-13 win over Cleveland on Sunday, Washington improves to 4-1 for the first time since 2008. And Jaden Daniels is a big part of that because of what he's been able to do. He's became the first player in NFL history to throw for more than 1,000 yards and rush for at least 250 in his first 5 games. He looks so good right now. He's elusive, he's explosive, and he's an exciting player to watch right now.
If I told you can have the entire NFL, this is like a fantasy draft, right? But for a team you're trying to win this year, you can have any quarterback that you want in the league to be the quarterback on your team. How many names are you listing before you get to Jaden Daniels? This is only for this year. We're not talking about like you're starting a franchise for the next decade. How many quarterbacks would you rather have for the rest of this season, as of today, over Jaden Daniels?
You're talking about from this year's draft? Or
No, just in general. Like 32 teams, you get to have whichever quarterback you want for the rest of this season. Because, like, I'm taking Mahomes over him still.
I was going to say Mahomes.
I know that he's not looked right this year, but if in a vacuum, you're telling me I can have whatever quarterback I want. I'm still taking Mahomes. I'm taking Josh Allen over him.
Yes.
I'm taking C.J. Stroud over him because I've seen it for a full season. People have tape on him. I'll still take C.J. Stroud. Probably Joe Burrow for me because that dude still terrifies the hell out of me as a Chiefs fan. Beyond that, how many other guys are you taking over Jaden Daniels right now? Is he already a top 5 quarterback for the rest of the season?
I think if you're talking about this season in particular, then yeah, I think that he's up in that conversation of being one of the top quarterbacks.
Lamar? You taking Lamar over Jaden Daniels today?
I think the break is, I think he's out of the top 5, 6th. And I think you can argue maybe 7th or 8th, depending on where you put Dak Prescott and Jordan Love.
I would probably put him above Dak. I think I would take him over Love.
And then you also have to put you have to put in the other NFC mainstays, Stafford and Goff.
I would say
I'm taking him over
exactly.
There.
Yeah.
But I would say top 10,
maybe 7
for sure.
Easily
in this
top 10, and then it just becomes like I think it's a conversation, him versus Lamar. I know I'm going to get yelled at for that on the text line.
Lamar stiff-armed Sam Hubbard twice.
I think they're similar as runners, and I'll take Jaden Daniels as a passer, man.
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
Lamar
I'm ready to
threw 50 touchdowns his second year.
I think Lamar's a really good quarterback. I'm not trying to diminish what he's done. I guess I am kind of doing
Did you see that touchdown this past weekend? That was insane.
He's a good quarterback. Great quarterback.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is more of a statement in favor of Jaden Daniels than it is opposed to Lamar Jackson. I think Jaden Daniels is amazing, man. So to your point, what he's done has been spectacular. I thought he should have been potentially the #1 overall pick this past year.
I've been saying the exact same thing. But this is honestly the best situation for him.
Sure. But he's also made it a lot better. Like,
yes.
Washington is never a good situation for anybody. Their offensive tackle came out this past weekend and said, I've never been a part of a good, positive culture before, and right now I'm seeing what that looks like. Guess who did it? It was Jaden Daniels that made that possible. I also want to give some kudos over the weekend to Caleb Williams. He's been really good since a weird start to the season. He was excellent this past week. All right. My highlight from the weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, NFL offenses are back. It took us a month, but we got here.
It was pretty scary there.
Now, some of it, look over here. Some of it was special teams and defenses that were scoring. Let's throw that out there. I think in the 3 o'clock slate, it was like 5 defense or special teams touchdowns. So that helped us get
defense
to this place. But we had 9 teams score at least 30 points this week. Previous weeks in the NFL, week 1, it was 6. Week 2, 3 teams scored 30 plus. Week 3, it was 6. Week 4, it was 8. So we started getting closer. This week, with 4 teams on bye, we had 9 teams score 30 points. And we have this Monday Night Football game as well. Teams to throw for at least 300 yards. This is where you really see things starting to develop for teams. Two teams threw for at least 300 yards in week 1, 2 in week 2, and then 4 in week 3, 4 in week 4. This week, 7 different NFL teams threw for at least 300 yards. So we are finally starting to see the passing game open up. My highlight from the weekend, congratulations to you and your fantasy team. We're finally starting to see offense across the league.
And I'd have to wonder, if you take the quarterbacks who didn't throw for 300 yards, I would almost guarantee their yards per completion is marketably higher than it was in week 1. Because even the guys who were completing passes in week 1, it was all dink and dunk. It was nothing down the field.
Yeah, passing has been an issue so far in the NFL this season. And
better,
you're right, this weekend, thank you. Especially Caleb Williams, you noted that too. That was exciting to see. Bo Nix was surprising too. Yeah, you know, it was better than what we've seen, BK, to your point, with NFL offenses.
The Jaguars looked competent offensively, which is not something that we've seen from them for the vast majority of the season. The Colts had a quarterback that could complete more than 40% of his passes, so that was nice to see. Some real offense around the league.
So my NFL low light from this weekend is it's time to move on from Deshaun Watson. I don't know why we keep trying to make this experiment work. I don't know why I lumped us into this conversation. This is on the Browns. Everybody knows that this is the worst contract in NFL history, that fully guaranteed $230 million. It just continues to get worse. Watson completing just 15 of 28 passes for all of 125 yards this weekend, and we kind of poked fun of it earlier, but a lot of people are on social media. That situation where the Browns are so bad that they lined up for a key 4th and goal situation from the 8-yard line with 12 men on the field. So you had that moment where Deshaun Watson was seen leaving the field, and people are like, what are you doing in this situation? Of course, he had 12 men on the field, but it just still did not look great for Deshaun Watson or for the Browns. It's time that they move on. Cut your losses. You already know that you're associated with this terrible contract. What else can you get out of this at this point?
I don't know. Maybe a couple, I don't know.
I think they're in the worst situation in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
Like long-term outlook. Forget this year, because this year is a wash. They're done. It's over for them. We did it earlier today where you're like, if you're doing the cross-off teams, they're one of them. I forgot them just because they're completely out of my consciousness at this point in the season.
Start planning how you can get Arch Manning.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the problem, though, is they would then fall into the same situation that the Falcons are in right now without having Kirk Cousins. Because the problem with taking a quarterback this year for the Falcons is you don't get any of the advantages of the rookie deal. Because you've got to pay so much to Kirk Cousins that you can't actually build around the rookie contracts the way that Washington now can, the way that Chicago can, the way that C.J. Stroud allows for the Texans. You can't do that if you're in Cleveland because you're going to have to pay $50 million each of the next couple of seasons to Deshaun Watson. They're at a terrible outlook for the foreseeable future. All right, my low light for the weekend, and this has been the low light for the season, really. NFL favorites, big favorites, are getting crushed this year. If you're in any kind of a survivor pool and you've been taking the big favorites this year, you're probably out of it at this point. favorites of at least 5.5 points are 3, 17, and 3 on the year against the spread. So they have won against the spread 3 times, lost 17 times, and pushed in 3 of those games. They are now, again, favorites of at least 5.5 points. So basically a touchdown favorite. 10 and 13 straight up. They are losing more often than they are winning so far on the season. And this is also due to the fact that there are not a lot of them. This year, this is according to an ESPN.com Vegas reporter, the average NFL point spread on the season is now down to 4.1. That is the smallest average margin for a line through the first 5 weeks of a season in the Super Bowl era. Teams, according to Vegas is seeing it the same way that you, Brooke, Rocchio, everybody in the audience right now. These teams are all basically the same. And what's happening because of that is everything's a 3-point line, basically. It's just I don't know. Pick one way or the other, and we'll see what happens there. Favorites of at least 5.5 points next week for those that are looking at something like this. Packers against the Cardinals, the Texans against the Patriots, the Eagles against the Browns, and the Falcons against the Panthers. If things hold up, 3 of those 4 will lose against the spread. So that's a winning proposition. If you want to go out there, make a bet early in the week, I would take the other side of that, the underdog in at least 1 or 2 of those lines, whoever you think is the most live.
It goes back to what we were discussing earlier, that you don't know what to expect with NFL teams every single week. There's not a team that you can fully trust at this point.
No, there's nobody. There's nobody that you can trust, and that is shown based upon the number of teams that are big-time favorites that are losing outright. 10 and 13 is crazy for these kinds of teams.
Yeah.
One quick low light I wanted to hit, because offenses are getting figured out. But as we learned from the Bills and the Bengals, coaches still having a little bit of a tough time figuring things out here early in the season, huh, BK?
So I had in our Pick'em challenge the Bills yesterday.
Oh, no. It was a rough weekend for you, wasn't it?
Part of it was on me. I took San Jose State on Saturday. I know, classic, right? Classic choice.
Wow.
So I had San Jose State. They ended up benching their quarterback at halftime. They did win, but not by enough. And then yesterday I had the Browns. Haha, good job, BK. Lost that one, too. And then I did have the Bills, because I think they're the better team, straight up against the Texans. Texans were going to be without their starting running back once again in this one. I just thought that was a fluky game against Baltimore. I thought they would win. Well, they had a chance to, and then they decided, while backed up in their own end zone with about a minute and a half to go, we're going to throw the ball 3 consecutive times instead of draining out the clock and making the Texans take all 3 timeouts. They kick it back to the Texans. The Texans get it into field goal range after their first play from scrimmage, and then Kai kicks the 59-yarder to win the game, and I lose outright. So
that was a rough weekend for you, BK.
That was an inexcusable decision. It's one of the worst coaching decisions that you'll see all year long. Sean McDermott is a really good coach. He lost his mind in that moment.
Zach Taylor, too. Zach Taylor flubbing that with the Bengals.
I knew that. I knew he's a bad coach.
Not surprised by that one anymore, but still egregiously bad. Even so, surprised me that he could dig down to his bag of badness and pull that one out of his hat.
At least, like with the Bengals, I can blame their defense for giving up 41 points in it. There was nobody else to blame in this one. Like the Bills did everything they needed to do to get back into that thing in the second half. They finally gave themselves a chance, and then they just blew it at the end with a coaching decision.
It's so bad. Sorry about that, BK.
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay. It'll be fine.
I'm used to it.
Good thing is there's Bills fans in the building. You can go cry on their shoulder.
Yes. I'm sure they're going to be super happy today.
I would love to hear Donnie's take on that.
You would have such a great day.
Me too.
That's BK, and I'm Brooke and Matthew Rocchio in studio here today. And we have Monday Night Football here on 101 ESPN. You can listen to the Chiefs and Saints pregame starting at 6:30. Kickoff for that game tonight is at 7:15. Coming up next, we have Rock and Roll here on the opening drive. Hey everyone, it's Brooke here, and I want to tell you why I love the Missouri Athletic Club. It's because it really feels like I've joined a community. I love going over to the West location and working out, playing tennis, and even just picking up some lunch and hanging out there. I can make a full day of it, and I love going to the downtown location where they host so many wonderful events. I'm actually going to the Women of Distinction Luncheon coming up this Wednesday at the downtown clubhouse, and it's just such a great way to really meet new people. And they always provide such a wonderful experience there, and that's why I love my MAC. Drive. Brooke, BK, and Roccio here, and it is time for Rock and Roll. What do you got, Rock?
A little rock and roll. Sorry.
What was that?
That was me trying to butcher the worst Southern accent I've ever done in my entire life.
That was a Southern accent?
It was not.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to butcher
at first I didn't know what that was. I did not associate with Southern. Okay. Anyways, what
I don't
do you
do
have?
accent work. I leave that to the professional. That's Randy Character's job.
What do you have?
For Rock and Roll, Brooke, you brought it up at the very beginning of the show when we talked about our three things from the weekend. It was a big weekend down in St. Louis City in City Park as they got the 3-0 win over the Houston Dynamo. But for me, the bigger event was actually on Sunday when St. Ous City 2 held their final home game of the season. They had a big 3-0 win. They clinched the second seed. They will actually do the way that MLS Next 2 does their playoffs is that they actually have a whole show where the teams actually get to pick their opponents. I know we've heard different teams throw that out there. Yes,
we need to do more of this.
MLS Next
the NFL should do this. There's a show where, like, if you get the number one seed, let's say the Texans get the number one seed in the AFC this year, they could then choose who they want to be their opponent of those that are available. Like, I think Major League Baseball should do this. Who was the number one seed in the National League this year? It was the Dodgers, right?
I believe so, yeah.
In the National, the Yankees were the number one seed in the AL. The Yankees should have been able to choose which of the two wild card teams they wanted to face in the DS, and then whoever they don't choose gets to go face off against the other divisional series and the Cleveland Guardians. I think we need this in more sports.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the Dodgers could have selected, had they wanted to, either the Padres, they probably wouldn't have selected, or the Mets. They could have been like, you know what, we would like to face off against the Mets in the first round, not the Padres, and then we can move on from there.
I like this version better.
What?
We have all the great stories that are happening right now. You don't think it would be great? Jack Flaherty mouthing off against Manny Machado. You have Jerks and Profar like getting into it with the fans. This is fantastic.
Oh, for sure. But think about how much great theater you would get out of the Mets feeling disrespected by the Dodgers picking them as the opponent that they wanted to face. It would be spectacular.
Which, by the way, happened.
Still probably would get Dodgers versus Padres. We would just get it in the NLCS instead.
And that's actually what happened in the MLS Next Pro playoffs last year. Is one of the lower seeded teams got selected first, and they won their first round matchup. And it was the whole, well, you're going to pick us. You think we're the easy ones? Well, fine, try to beat us. I mean, you're literally building in storylines that are guaranteed to be something. And as BK said, even more so if you're the NFL, because you can use freaking ESPN to do it. But the MLS Next Pro has a broadcast tomorrow night on Tuesday the 8th where they will be doing it and showing the teams picking their teams and obviously breaking down the matchups. It gives you a whole night of television to take over, and everyone's then talking about your sport again. I don't know how the NFL or one of the big four hasn't jumped on this chance, because like BK said, it just gives you so many opportunities. So St. Louis City 2 will pick their opponent tomorrow. They went on a crazy run here to close out the season, including their 5-0 win on Saturday. And the bigger thing is over 12,000 people were in the City Park stands for Sunday afternoon's win for St. Louis City 2, which I believe is now the 4th different time that City has set a new attendance record for MLS Next Pro. So to get 12,000 people actually in the building, that wasn't just announced tickets, that was through the turnstiles, butts in seats on a Sunday afternoon when for a secondary team, that's unbelievably impressive.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Think about this, bro. If we had this in Major League Baseball and you did it for like the wild card round, right? It'd probably be the division winner that gets to choose who they get to play in that first round among all of the wild card teams. The Tigers beating the Astros was already amazing. Huge upset,
yes.
Right? The Astros almost certainly would have selected the Tigers as the team that they got to face in the first round, which would have made it just that much better. That the team that they chose to play in the first round ends up beating them in an upset. In the National League, the Brewers would have been able to select, and it probably would have once again been the exact same result where they're going up against the Mets. They might have chosen the Braves, though. It might have been a Brewers versus Braves series, which kind of adds another level of intrigue.
But here's why it's amazing, because 5 years from now, we then talk about how the Astros picked their own doom to finish out their run. Like the Astros run ended when they had to face off against the Tigers. And why did they face off against the Tigers? Because they chose them to be the team that ended their run. Like, yes, we'd be doing 100% some hindsight kind of, results-oriented chicanery. I don't care. It's fun, and it would be better for the sport if, after the fact, we could then be like, man, you guys picked your own finisher. Sucks to suck. Like, that's a fun thing.
You know what this would be the best for is college football.
Yes.
In the college football
yes.
playoff, the teams that end up getting to host that first round, if they got to, based upon where you finish, the team that finishes 5th in the rankings would be the top choice.
Mm-hmm.
And they get to choose from 9 to 12 who they would play in the first round, and then it goes down that order, and then whoever finishes 8th gets whoever is remaining.
Now, it probably won't be this way because of the way that everything's happening. It looks like there will be a not great team maybe getting the 4 seed as the 4th conference champion, but all the seasons where most likely the 12 seed is going to be some non-power 4 conference champion, and they'll have the chip on their shoulder like we only lost 1 game. Some SEC team that has 3 losses picked us. They think they're going to take us down in the first round. No. Like, it's perfect. I'm 100% with you, BK.
And there'd be more TV to watch. So you guys are right. I would tune in. I would tune in for the drama. It'd be great reality TV. So I'm bought in now. You guys have sold me over, especially with college football. I'm thinking about how that would really help rivalries too.
Sure.
It feels like a lot of that has changed. Thank you, Rocchio, for rock and roll and everything today.
Pleasure.
BK, thank you for coming in once
Great
again.
To be in.
I feel
Love
like
doing my Monday mornings.
Yeah, I need to keep track of how many Mondays that you've done this so far, but it lines with golf season.
Sure.
So yes, Randy Carricker golfing. He'll be back tomorrow. So will Danny Mac. Thank you all for listening today. Coming up next, we have the Balloon Party here on 101 ESPN.